Alrighty, Lawrence. So you're gonna show us where you work and how you work.
Yeah, this is my station.
Okay. Okay, let's take a look at
It's
that.
a little bit messy.
Okay, so let's take a look and maybe you can explain everything you got going on over on this table here, because we got a lot of stuff on this table. So probably a lot more than the average person would need. But why don't we go through everything here, and so those of your viewers who are interested.
A lot of paint, of course. I use almost a lot of Games Workshop.
Okay.
Some P3 formula from Private Press. I have painted all the face of my R1 who won Golden Demon in Games de Toronto with only these colors. We have, of course, the Foundation Citadel from Games Workshop.
Okay.
Really interesting because they are really good for the covering.
Okay.
Really interesting for gamers because with 1 or 2 cuts, it's okay, it's well done. Yeah.
And what else do we got here?
Oh, we got a lot of things.
Okay, show us.
So you got, for example, that is a wet palette.
Okay.
You know, you can use dry palette or wet palette. You put a little bit of, paper for the kitchen.
Paper towel,
yeah,
right?
Paper towel with water.
Okay, so you just wet it up a little bit.
Yeah. You put a piece of cooking paper.
Cooking paper. Let's get that cooking paper here. Hey, show me what you were showing me earlier with the when you took it out, when you streaked across it.
You can see.
Yeah, this has already been sitting here for 5 minutes. It's hardly even. I mean, it's still wet.
Yeah.
Perfect.
It could be if the weather is not too hot. It could work for all the night.
What would you recommend? What did you recommend for beginners?
Personally, I use the two. For example, if I want to do a wash, so I need a really diluted paint. I use that.
Okay. Very cool.
But you can see I use you can see anything as a wet palette as a palette. This is the
bottom of a water bottle, and you're using that as a dry palette just for the different compartments in there. Perfect. While I was watching you paint, I noticed that you hardly ever change your water. Some people say you should change your water after every different color that you use.
Oh, there is no really rule for that, I change it, yeah, but sometimes I keep the same for 1 or 2 days because
1 or 2 days.
Yeah.
So going through lots of different colors.
Yeah, but it could give a little bit of homogeneity. Some painters say that.
Perfect. Now, what kind of brushes do you use?
I use this trademark Raphael.
Raphael.
Yeah, and 8404.
Okay.
They are really the best. It is the Rolls Royce for what we are doing.
The Rolls Royce.
Yeah.
The best brushes you can use.
They are expensive. So
what series is that you got there? I'm not sure if I can pick that up on my camera. What series? This guy 8404. 3C.
You have different size, and you can see the difference. It is 0. The most important thing is the point.
The tip.
The tip, yeah.
That's right.
Sorry.
No problem. Excellent. So we're just going to show how Laurent normally paints here now, because on the course of the DVD we had a bunch of lights and cameras in the way, and obviously it was very difficult for him to tape. So this is Laurent's natural environment. This is how he normally paints. You can see the distance that the Mini is and how he holds it. He puts it into a cork. Is that a cork there, Laurent? So you use paper clips. You just straighten them out, clip them, stick them at the bottom of the Mini. Just drill a little hole into the Mini and stick at the bottom, and then stick it into a cork. It that allows you to handle the Mini without actually touching any of the paint, which is good. So like I said, this is Laurent's natural environment for painting. So how much do you dilute your paint? Now that's pure paint there. How much do you usually dilute?
It really depends of
what you're painting?
Yeah, of what what you are painting. For example, I'm doing now a really thin base coat. I want something really smooth for this part, so I'm coming with a lot of thin coats. You can see I have diluted that like the consistency of milk, but you can dilute much more than that if you are doing, for example, washing for coloring something you achieved.
Good. So about the consistency of skim milk is where you like to do it.
Yeah.
So why do you use a paper towel over here?
I use the paper towel to keep a big part of the paint out of him because I don't want to have too much paint on my brush.
Exactly.
To exactly control where I put the paint.
To put the paint, exactly. So
if I add too much, it could be...
it starts to pool.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's one of the things we want to avoid. The reason
that is really important.
Absolutely. And we've seen that throughout the course of the DVD while we were painting. We're always trying to avoid the large messes of large pools of paint, and so it's good to have something like a paper towel, something absorbent to take away the excess paint out of the brush.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right, so Laurent, where do you go for inspiration? Where would you recommend people should go if they want examples of other?
You get a lot of things. The first thing you can do is to look at what is all around you. Okay, in the streets, the face of the people to keep close. A lot of inspiration with looking at sketchbooks and concept on websites, and a lot of inspiration, of course, with books like that. You all know the White Dwarf. You got a lot of things in it for how to use colors.
Absolutely.
I think there is a particular article in it. This one about the painting tips for this kind of thing. You got a lot of really interesting things with the color which used.
Absolutely, and Games Workshop is an American publication, so it's written in English. So
this one comes from Canada, but they get publication in all countries.
All the world, exactly. And what about this one, Ravage?
This magazine, Ravage, I don't know if it is published in USA. It is a French magazine, really interesting about the game and painting tips, and they are making a special thing for painters. And this one is really good, really good. So this one is really interesting because you got a lot of really good French and other country painters who are explaining a lot of things,
Exactly. I mean, there's a wealth of information in Ravage. I particularly like Ravage. I think it's one of the better magazines out there because it's not focused specifically on one particular type of model or one particular type of company's models. They do all kinds of stuff, so lots of good inspiration in there for you guys.
They're organizing the first really open contest for fantasy,
Excellent.
And the only one we have only for fantasy.
Excellent, thank you.
Without trademarks.
Perfect. And Laurent really likes to paint in a very natural environment. You'll notice that the environment that he paints in, he sits right beside huge windows during the day. And lots of light floods into this room, and you can see everything's really white. I mean, the ceilings are white, the walls are white, the floor is white. There's a lot of white, basically, because what happens is the light comes in through the window and then bounces around this room. And you can see that even though Laurent's hand's right on top of something where it should be creating a shadow, there's hardly any shadow created there, and that's really the kind of light that you wanna work with. And the reason for that is that natural lighting simulates the lighting that most people will view in Mini. So if you're looking at it under like yellow light or a daylight balanced bulb, even sometimes that kind of doesn't produce the exactly natural effect that natural daylight will produce. So there you have it.
So it is really important to prepare the Mini before the paint job. Okay. So I use first an X-Acto to hold all the mold lines. Okay. You have it there, for example. Okay. And there.
Okay. By mold lines, you mean like extra pieces of metal that are left over from the molding process.
Yeah. And something like flashes, of metal. Mm-hmm. Okay. Then after, I do the same thing with a file. With a file. Okay. Like this.
And you just kind of rub it in there and get rid of anything.
Yeah.
Okay.
After that, we can do it with
sandpaper, right.
Really fine, extra fine sandpaper, like 600. It is really important, this part. And after, and it is the last thing, we can do the same thing with iron wool. Okay. And with iron wool, you became all the areas really smooth.
Okay. So you you use the iron wool to really smooth it out, but then I noticed that you did it before. You went all over the miniature with the iron wool.
Yeah.
And that's sort of to remove any non-adhesive chemicals that are left over from the process, so you just got a very smooth mini. You don't have any extra chemical sort of sticking to the metal.
Yeah.
Okay, and that'll help the paint apply a lot better as well.
Yeah,
the paint will go on a lot smoother and a lot cleaner.
For the blending, it's much more easier.
Much more easier for the blending, exactly.
Yeah.
So preparation of mini is very important. Removing all the molding lines before you begin painting, because once you begin painting, it's very difficult to remove the mold lines afterwards.
Yeah.
And so better to make your life easy now, prime it, remove all the molding and flashing now. Yeah. It's a little tedious and a little boring, but you'll end up with really good results afterwards.
It's really important to take the time and be patient. For the priming, it's important to shake really with the spray.
Okay.
That's the first important thing.
And what kind of can of paint are you using there?
I'm using Games Workshop School White.
Okay.
For myself, it is the best you can find for this job.
Mm-hmm.
I try a lot of other, but I prefer this one.
Okay, so
when you really shake, really well shake it.
So the reason you're priming this miniature is so that the paint will, when you apply your paints, they'll stick to the miniature. So this is just a way to get the paint to stick to the metal.
Yeah, it's not really important to have a white all over the miniature, not too much white.
Okay.
But it's important for the other paint you apply to pick it up on the miniature.
Okay, no problem. And is there a preference that you have, white paint over, say, black paint or something like that? Like I know some painters use black, some use gray. You use white.
It's easier to paint with a black primer, and the general feeling of the miniature is darker.
Okay.
But you get a brighter job with white.
So basically what we're going to end up with is a much brighter miniature.
Yeah.
Not as contrasty. It's not going to be as much contrast. And you're going to be working on the shadows. You're going to be building in your own shadows. Is basically what you're going to be doing.
If you make a black primer, you always have black in your shadows. But if you don't want to have black in your shadows, it's much more interesting to work with white primer.
Exactly, and that's what we're going to be. We're going to be having some really nice, colorful shadows for you guys. Yeah. So go ahead and show us how you prime this, because this is something that a lot of people who are just starting out kind of screw this one up a little bit, because they ended up applying too much paint that is required. So why don't you show us the proper way to how much paint to actually apply to a mini?
The important thing is to turn around the mini, not to spray like that.
Okay.
Just little touch at 20 centimeters. Not too tame at the same place.
Okay.
And that's okay for me.
And that's it. Yeah. And you're done.
You must do it outside or in a very
ventilated area.
Not into your apartment, because it smells not good.
Okay, no problem. Excellent, thank you. So notice that you didn't completely cover the model with the primer. I could still see some parts of the metal showing through.
Yeah, but it's not for myself. It's my opinion. It's not really important to have white on all over the miniature.
Okay.
You know, you apply paint in the shadows here. You can see metal in this part, for example, but there will be the deepest shadow here. So the color you applied is the deepest and the darker color.
So it's not really noticeable. Okay.
So it's not really important.
Right.
It's much more important on the areas that are lighter.
Raised.
Because you can see always by transparency the white under the color you apply.
Absolutely.
So I prefer to have white on those areas, but not necessary in the shadows.
Some painters would disagree with you. I know some painters like to completely cover every inch or every millimeter of them, and very thoroughly cover every millimeter of the mini.
Every people has his technique. My is that you know, one of the reasons I do like that, it's because I don't want to. I want to see all the details of the mini.
Okay.
And with a light.
With a light coating,
with a light prime, I'm sure to keep all the details perfect. You know?
So it's important that you don't lose some of the details, because on a miniature, such a small miniature, putting too much primer can especially lose some of the details, especially in the face.
Yeah, especially in the face, because the face is the most important part of the
Exactly. Okay, fantastic. So go ahead.
Okay. So I put water.
So what kind of color is that you're using there?
I use for the base coat of the clock a sort of brown white, you know, brown red, you know.
Brownish red. And what's the color called?
The name of the color is rouge cadmium brûlé.
Okay. So basically any kind of dark red color.
Yeah, you can use Games Workshop Dark Flesh.
Dark Flesh?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
It's nearly, it's not totally the same, but it's the same way of proceeding.
Perfect.
So for the base coat.
Now, just before we begin, for the base coat, now I notice you're adding some water there. Now, a lot of people like to know how much water for a base coat do you add to the paint?
So for the first coat, I had this water, one stick paint, one stick water.
So one part paint, one part
paint,
water.
1 part water.
Okay.
For the beginning.
For the beginning.
Because I want this coat to really color the mini.
You want it to cover. You want to create a lot of good coverage.
Yeah. So I began by the base coat for this part, the clock.
No problem.
So you see my color.
Okay, so so I noticed that you're not putting it on so much. It's not a complete coverage right away. It takes time.
Yeah, it takes time, but for really good blending, you must do something like that.
Okay.
For the beginning.
Okay, so it's gonna go on looking very very thin. It's gonna look a little uneven. The paint, you're going to see the different paint strokes. Yeah. But once you've got that, you're going to basically apply another coat after this. Is that right? So you're going to go maybe one. How many coats of this are you going to do?
5 or 6.
5 or 6 just for the base coat.
Yeah.
Wow. And was there a reason that you go so?
It's for really, if you want really a good base coat.
A really good smooth result.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I know some painters that go and just put one base coat, nice and thick.
It's possibly too. You can sometimes on minis I do only two base coat. It depends of the of the paint.
Right.
It depends of the result you want to have at the end. But so it's not really necessary to have a.
Perfect coverage.
Yeah, perfect coverage. Thanks.
No problem.
So we got the prime color.
So you don't wait for the one for it to dry before you put on the next one.
Normally you must wait, but it is my first coat for the base coat.
Okay.
So it is not really important because.
No problem.
I will paint so much other coats.
No problem. So you're gonna do. So normally what you do is you put it on thinly. Wait about what 5-10 minutes or so, or.
Yeah, for this area, I'm okay with my first base coat there.
Okay, so that's so right there. What we're looking at is your first base coat. Now you're gonna wait about 5 or 10 minutes, and then you're gonna do another one of the exact same thing.
No, not so much time. I just wait for this coat to make dry.
Okay.
And I began. Sometimes, for example, I began another part of the mini, and then I let this base coat.
This part dry.
Yeah, dry.
Right.
And then I do another part of the mini.
Okay.
So we got here first coat for hold the head.
So we're ready to do the second, and after that a third and a fourth coat to get a really smooth.
You stop when your base coat is really homogenic.
Really homogenic.
Same color everywhere on the Mini.
Perfect.
You know.
Okay.
But you can, for the second base coat, you can dilute it a little
bit more.
No,
you can add more paint.
Yeah.
You can add more paint, less water.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're going for the second base coat.
Okay, perfect. And this one you said was you're using a little bit less dilution this time.
Yeah.
A little bit more paint, or
you can dilute it the same way if you want, but you can dilute it a little bit less. So you see, I'm blowing to make the paint dry faster.
Okay.
You see on this part the color really much more homogenic.
Yeah, I can see that's very more.
Just with the second,
it's a lot smoother. Just with the second coat already, it's coming out a lot smoother. Wow. Perfect. Yeah, so just keep going and we'll...
So you could see the difference between this part of the Mini with two coats and this one with only one.
Yeah, it's a huge difference, and it's obvious.
Just with the second, it's much more colorful.
Yeah, actually the color even looks better. The color looks deeper, and
yeah, and it's just the beginning. So you can come back on some areas you forgot, like that here.
Perfect.
For example.
Perfect.
And you know, with the first coat really diluted, I applied. It's much easier with the second because I know where to put my red.
Yeah, exactly. It's a lot faster.
Yeah. At this step of my base coat, I want I want to my brush want to come back and to finish it because I began to feel the color, you know.
Right.
Understand?
Yeah, exactly. So at the second coating, you already feel like trying to complete the whole thing.
Yeah, yeah. You when you begin to see what will be the final result.
And that's something you gotta watch out for because sometimes people, especially when they're doing a coating that's very dilute like this, sometimes they'll stop at 2 coats, but it really does need a 3rd and 4th coat to really get it smooth.
Yeah.
Even though you think this is enough, sometimes going the extra coat really does help your result.
Yeah. So we began the 3rd coat. We can see that the Mini is much more colorful.
Yeah,
much more
homogeneous.
Yeah. So we began the 3rd. Always remember to add a little bit water if you see that your
Water's drying up.
your
paint's
your
drying
paint.
up, right?
So I took the mini this way. So an important thing is when you see your on your palette your paint goes
Kind of drying out.
kind of dry out. You add a little more water to keep it 1 part water, 1 part
paint. Right.
And there you can see with the third coat we are starting to have something homogenic on this area.
Oh yeah, exactly.
We let it dry, and then the color began to be homogenic with third coat.
Right.
So we certainly have what we want with 4 or 5 coats. Now we have the final result after 6 or 7 coats of my base coat color.
Okay, and we can see that
You can see that it is totally homogenic.
Totally smooth, totally homogenic, no problem. And you know what? One thing I was going to mention to you as well is that there's a lot of gamers who really just apply base coats to their miniatures and don't really bother with the highlights.
Just one big base coat, you know.
And by doing a really smooth base coat in layers, like 6 or 7, different layers, is going to get their gaming miniatures really smooth results.
Yeah, sure. The base coat is the most important thing because it's preparing all the rest of your paint job.
Absolutely.
Now I mix my first base coat, royal navy brown,
Okay.
with a little bit of midnight blue.
Okay.
Because blue and
So this is basically by mixing the brown and the blue, you're gonna create a nice kind of like darker brown is what you're trying to
darker
go after.
brown with a little bit of purple.
With a little bit, okay.
Could you see it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's looking.
It becomes
really
a little bit purple.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can add a little bit more.
Okay, so we'll add. Now, are you gonna add any water to that shadow?
Oh yeah, I got water.
Okay.
So yeah, I think it's okay for beginning. Sometimes you see it's too dark or not, or sometimes you see your color is too dark. You can add a little bit more of your base coat.
Mm-hmm.
Or not too dark. You can add a little bit more of
your shadow.
Yeah.
Right.
You must find the good shadow for beginning.
Absolutely. Now I know some painters they just use a one straight color for shadows, but you're suggesting that you mix a base coat with the shadow color.
Yeah.
To make it more harmonious.
Yeah.
To get it to
and
more
and because
homogenious.
it helps you to get a more
a smoother blend.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So for the shadows we diluted it a little bit more.
Okay.
Then 1 part of paint and 2 parts of water.
2 parts of water.
Yeah, approximately. So we began the first shadow.
Okay.
Then we try to put the first shadow on everywhere we think it must be darker.
Right, according to the light source. So if the light was coming from head on, from overhead, this is where we would place our shadows.
Yeah.
Okay. And you can see that Laurent's using a very, very dilute shadow, which makes obviously blending a lot easier.
Then here you can begin your shadow here, at the middle of this part. And you make your paint go deepest.
Right. You push your paint.
Yeah, you push your paint.
Push that paint.
And then here you do the same thing. You push your paint in the darker part of the mini.
Right. So
shown by the skull job.
Right.
This part will totally be dark, not black, but
Okay.
it would be one of the darker part of the cloak there.
Okay.
And here you can.
Yeah, so go ahead, take your time, find your
Yeah.
shot, and then. Right. Oh,
Yeah.
and I can see that it is getting a very smooth kind of darkness in there. It's
Do
really-
you see the first
Yeah,
the
I do.
first dark parts there?
Yeah, absolutely. It's very nice. It helps. Just a little bit of darkness on this one because the base coat is already so dark. So this little bit of darkness really helps to bring out
Yeah.
those folds.
Don't forget it's blue we had in too. So this color is a mix of red, brown, and blue.
Mhm.
It becomes something between
Between the two.
between the two, with a little bit of purple in it.
Right.
So it is really colorful, you know.
Very much.
Red and blue are two colors which are really working together. Two complementary colors. Here you can see I
Made a
put
mistake.
up
Yeah, just take away a little bit of the paint.
before
Yeah, so
before it
it dries too
Yeah.
much. Yeah, absolutely.
but it's not really dramatic. I can come back and then I I paint shadows on this part too because
Mhm.
it is under the
Under the
this
hood.
part of the clock, so it will be
It'll be
the
a
darker
shade. It'll
part
be a
of
shadow
the
there anyways. Right.
So not
Not too much to
catastrophic.
worry about.
Here you can play with the movement of the clock, you know. This part
Absolutely.
when you had your mini like that,
Mhm.
you know, this
Yeah,
part
you can-
is a
you
little
can-
bit
yeah,
a little bit
Dark.
yeah.
Yeah, you can see that. You can see that when you put it in the right
This
place.
part too. Yeah. This part too is a little bit dark and it goes really dark here because it is
Completely in shadow.
yeah.
Absolutely.
So we get a shadow here too. you know.
Okay. That's right.
And we come from the medium
From
to the
medium.
shadow.
Right. So you're pulling the paint into the shadow.
Yeah.
That's very important to remember because you don't want the paint to pool just at the lip of the shadow. Yeah, and I can see you're blowing on it and it really helps to dry it.
You make it dry.
Yeah.
Normally, if you're doing things the right thing, you put your paint just like this.
Mm-hmm. And then that
Just one time. You put it. You wait.
And then you can examine what's going on. Yeah, absolutely, that really works. And I think it's important that you mix the base coat with the shadow color because it's really helping it blend very nicely. Like
Yeah.
if you get too aggressive with your shadows, if you go straight to black, I think you would notice the border.
You're totally
between-
right. You're totally right. It's you do the job faster,
Yeah,
but not the same quality.
not the same quality. Absolutely.
It's really a question of patience, you know. There we got really
And the thing is, sometimes the results are not visible right away when you put the paint on. Give it a couple coats, give it a little bit of time, and you're going to start to see the results. That's what really painting
that's the
is
secret.
about.
That's the secret, you know. That's only that. Here you can see this part of the clothes. We really have a first convincing shadow here.
Absolutely.
We let it dry. Then you begin to really seeing it. You can add something like that,
Mm-hmm.
just to make it come from the
and-
medium part.
And would you suggest to those people who are trying to make, like, say, a competition mini to maybe even dilute the shadows even more?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
mm.
You can put your mini under a zenithal light,
Okay.
and it's shown you automatically where the shadows are, because
Right.
the part in the shadow
Mm-hmm.
must be painted in shadows, and the part who receive the more light
Mm-hmm.
must receive with the paint job the more light.
Absolutely. So sometimes it's good to have, say, a directional light source
Yeah.
nearby,
Yeah.
so you can just constantly check by putting your miniature under there to see where the shadows fall, naturally would fall.
Sure. When you want to paint, you must observe the natural things.
And there we have it. Look at that. Look at the shadows are really coming out there, and it's looking great.
They're not really deep for the moment, but it's the first step.
So now we're adding a little bit more blue. I see here.
Yeah.
This is to get. This is for our second application of shadows.
Yeah.
We still got the brown in there, but we've added just a. We've added basically.
Going to the blue.
Exactly. So we got basically 50-50 mix. The first part of the mix would be our half blue, half brown base.
Yeah.
And we're adding that another whole blue. So that basically gives us 3 parts blue to 1 part base.
For the second base coat, we try to get more deep in the shadows.
Okay.
After doing that, we will see if we want the deepest shadow beginning more higher compared to the medium color.
Okay. So this will give us a good indication of whether we need to go further with the shadows.
Yeah, if we must begin with more aggressive shadows or not.
Okay, exactly. So this will tell us whether or not we'll look at the end result and decide if we need to do more shadowing.
But I think it would be
It's
good.
probably
Like
just enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And here on this part of the clock, we could see that it's not so much dark than this place, for example. This area need more shadows than this area.
Right.
Because if you take the miniature in front of you and look like that, you could see that here it is really under, and here it is open to the light.
Right.
So we put
just a little bit of the shadow
just a little bit to make this part stand out.
Right.
We could put a little bit here. The most important part is that.
Right. And let's see how that looks really
You
nice.
begin to see really the blue through the brown.
Absolutely.
And it gives the color more deepest.
More depth.
Yeah, more depth.
Yeah, more realism and depth.
Thanks
Absolutely.
all around.
Okay. Now we're going to start with the back. So you need to put more brown back into your into your mix.
To have my first step of shadow.
Right. So we're getting back to the approximately 50% blue, 50% base.
Yeah, something like that. You know, it's just a matter of taste.
Yeah.
You can add a little bit more blue. You can use different blue.
Yeah.
You can use purple if you prefer, and you can use black if you prefer black color. And the only important thing is to do the shadows step by step.
Absolutely.
Not too hard, you know. Not too sharp.
Not too sharp.
Yeah.
Not too aggressive with them.
Yeah.
So, gradually.
Here you see my first step is really light.
Yeah, absolutely. Very dilute, almost.
But I prefer to do. It's my way of painting, but I prefer to do something like that because if I make a mistake, it's not a problem.
Absolutely.
It takes. Sure, it takes lots more time, but I prefer to do like that. But I want to do the precision that it is just my way of painting. You finally found your own way.
Your own technique.
Yeah, your own technique. What you prefer. Some people not diluting a lot. Some people doesn't dilute their paint, and they are doing an amazing job. I don't know how they do it, but they do it.
Absolutely.
It is totally different from my way of painting, but it's possible. I show you one way to do, my way to do, but you must find your way to do. here. So you know, you can do these steps faster if you want to paint for armies, for example, and not to spend so much time. You can add a little bit more blue at every step and not dilute it so much. You certainly have not a good perfect blending, but you get the effect, the visual effect of the blue in the red brown. It really works together.
Absolutely.
And the rest is just a question of time and patience.
Absolutely.
Then you got the effect. If you look at the mini not too close, it's really matching.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's really working. More time you take, more your result could be better. But you know, I know painters who do the same thing in half time because they have their own technique different. So I painted just this part of the clock because it takes too much time to show on all the clothes. But
yeah, absolutely.
On this area, I think you have now a good idea of
exactly
what it should be at the end.
Exactly. It's not necessary to paint the entire cloak on the mini. That would take a long time. Basically, we're here to show you guys how to basically achieve the same results using these techniques, and you should be able to use this technique for the entire cloak on your own. And look at that, wow, what a difference. Really looking nice. Really looking nice. Exquisite. This is going to be your first highlight on the cloak. Yeah. So we're using here just basically a lighter, just a slightly lighter shade of red than our base coat was, and you can use pretty much any color you want. Dark flesh with a little bit of red might help, or something else.
So now we are going for the first highlight.
Okay.
Then it's the same thing but opposite, you know. The shadows are not automatically finished at this level, but we can begin highlight before going deepest in the shadow.
Right. So we will come back and do a final shadows if it needs to be done.
Yeah.
In some of the darker parts, but
you could come back on every steps.
Yeah.
At every time, at every moment.
Absolutely.
So I began with.
Sometimes it's a good idea to start with the highlights, even though you're not completely satisfied with the shadows, because sometimes they'll inform you as to how deep you want to go with your shadows.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, wow, that's really that's a really nice colorful red, and it's really starting to come out there.
Same dilution as for the shadow, you know.
One part to one part.
The perfect dilution is when you do that, and then you see the paint making
drying almost
like that.
In a few seconds,
you know, you see it drying. Little bit of blowing.
Absolutely.
And okay, there is nothing.
Fantastic.
And you come back.
Sorry, and I thought, and so the dilution on this one is about 2 to 3 parts water to 1 part paint.
Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah, about 2 to 3 parts. That's right. And we're going to go over and over until we get a really nice, solid color coming through, that really nice saturated kind of reddish brown.
I really do it on this part and this part because it is more easier for me, and it is more visible for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So here you can dilute it a little bit less to make the color strongest.
Right.
And you know, we have put this first highlight really near the first shadow. Then finally you won't see any part of the base coat, just only by transparency.
By transparency, right.
Yeah. But for example, I didn't paint this part here, or just a little bit.
And you can already tell the difference between those two parts. Yeah. It really, really sticks out.
You see that here, you can see the first highlight becoming, and you see that it is not the same color. The difference is really thin, you know, because it is the first highlight, and we use it to make the cloak really smooth.
Right. Yeah, like I've already seen you put that same one on about 7 or 8 times.
When we began the second highlighted with something like a blood red, really much strong mixed with this first highlight, we began to have really something colorful. Here, it is important to make a good transition between shadows and highlight. You can see the same thing here. You know, I prefer to make it a little bit smoother. It's working by transparency now because we diluted.
Absolutely. And by transparency, basically what Laurent means is that the paint is so dilute, so thin, that the color underneath is showing up through it.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
That's what we mean by transparency when we say that. That was your, so that's your highlight, your first highlight?
My first highlight, yeah.
Your first highlight color.
And I took, at this
this is a scab
at this step, you know, I took a little bit of my two colors.
Okay, and that's blood red, is that?
Yeah,
blood red. Okay, so blood red and then your first highlight red, which was the...
blood red.
Right.
And this one. Then here you can begin to do something like what I'm doing here, you know, make this part stand out.
Right, the edges.
So you had a little bit of color to this part. The edges, yeah. Same thing here. Here, because it is interesting to see that. Here. And you know, you can begin in your shadow. It's not a big deal to do that because you can come back on your shadow too. And
absolutely.
This color is more lighter than the color which is under. So, it works by transparency. Depends on the final result you want. Something more darker or something more lighter. So, if you want to do that for all the clothes, it takes a lot of time. Perhaps for someone who knows how to do with these colors, 6 or 8 hours. And you could see the areas I painted are less and less, more and more little. After all the job we do here, we can come back with a medium red to make the whole, a final blending to make all work together and smooth the transition between the different colors. Now I take blood red, very diluted, and I make a wash on all the part I have painted before.
The whole cloak.
Yeah, the whole cloak.
Exactly.
For 2 reasons. The first reason is to blend it all the cloak, and the second reason is to become my red more brighter.
Right.
More colorful.
Right, and so because we are trying to match the original mini on the cover, and so we're gonna have to try to make that because it's turning out a little bit darker than we expected. So what we're gonna do is, and it's good to learn the mistakes or learn, you know, as you're going along. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna wash over with very dilute red, blood red, to sort of not only harmonize the color but also to make the entire cloak brighter red.
Then we can come after on the shadow if we want to.
Absolutely.
So it is not a big deal. So just 2 or 3 times like that, you blend it all and make it smoother.
So now we're going to mix a little bit of bronzed flesh, Games Workshop bronzed flesh, and this is the blood red to give a slightly in highlight for that red. It's almost an orangey red kind of look.
Then you see that the red is becoming more and more brighter, but it takes long time to have something really smooth blended.
Wow, that really helped.
You can see we have finished all this area of the clothes.
And so we're using here Games Workshop Black,
Yeah.
which we're going to use for the hair here.
Well,
the hair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the better black.
Yeah.
You know.
The best black you can
Yeah.
get.
The best black and the best white.
And the best
for
white.
for myself, but for a lot of painters. Now we are going to base coat the hair in black. So the first base coat is 1 part
Again,
of
1 part
paint
water with 1 part
and
paint.
1 part of water.
Perfect.
Here we got
A little bit of spillage.
yeah.
And we can see that. So the way we're going to clean that up is
We
take
we try to clean it up with
another brush.
Another brush. It's not a problem. We can add a little more of the base coat of the face after we finish. Those kind of mistakes are not really. If you can avoid them, it's even better. But it's not catastrophic, you know.
Absolutely. So it's important as well to see these mistakes. So
yeah, sure.
Some of the people out there who are learning can figure out ways to kind of
everybody do
resolve
them.
the issue.
Everybody do them, you know.
Yeah, and I can see wow that it's very dilute as well. The black.
Yeah, I really very diluted for my first coat as a guide, you know, because if I do mistake like that, it's not really catastrophic. If I do a real spot of black here with a color not diluted, it could be more
catastrophic.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And with a real diluted color, you know, it goes in the deepest areas of the
by itself. It just kind of makes its way in there.
And so it gives me the guide for the rest of the paint job, and then I can work after with not so much diluted color to have the right black color I want. But if, for example, at this step you must be really, you must really carefully working.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to be very careful. Try
Yeah,
to get it
yeah,
on
yeah.
the part that you're painting only, especially with
Oh yeah.
with the black.
Yeah.
Especially with the black, it is so much darker than the
The dark colors
shadow
in
gray.
generally, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's more difficult to work with. I will paint the hair a different way technically than the other part of the mini. After the priming in black,
Mhm.
I will come from the shadows to the highlighted. For the hair,
Mhm.
the black is the darker color we use. And after that, we are going to highlight it, and only to highlight it.
Right, so there's no need to shadow it because
Yeah.
we pretty much got the darkest color
Yeah.
already as a base coat.
Yeah, and the final result is that the hair become more darker than the other part,
Absolutely.
and it helps to make the face stand out.
To really
you,
stand
you,
out.
you begin to see it there.
Hair is a place where, especially if you're making it black and you don't dilute it like this, you can lose a lot of the detail.
Yeah, yeah. If you use a paint not diluted,
Mhm.
it goes in the.
Absolutely, and I've seen this with other miniatures. Like, I mean, this is a really good miniature. This is an excellently sculpted miniature. But I've seen in some of the other miniatures that are smaller,
Yeah.
Where the hair is not so well defined.
Yeah.
And I've seen by applying a lot of black to the hair, a lot of the individual strands sort
Yeah.
of disappear after you put the base coat, and it makes it a lot harder for you to make out the detail there.
Sure.
So yeah, keeping it a very dilute color also helps to really make that hair stand out.
Always the same thing for the first coat. I always keep real diluted. After we can work with a less diluted color, but the first is really when you get some areas where you must be careful. So something we want to say is
Something we want to stress here is that Laurent's painting with a giant camera in front of his face here. It's literally inches from his nose. Normally he doesn't paint like that, so obviously he paints a lot faster and a lot smoother with his strokes are a lot more sure. It's a little bit difficult when you're trying to make it for the video to constantly keep getting it in frame and getting out of frame. So we apologize if sometimes it's a little out of frame and we're moving it around a bit, and if it seems a little jittery, but we are trying to work with a lot of lights and cameras, like literally inches from Laurent's nose. So we appreciate your patience.
you need a lot of patience if you want to paint miniatures.
Yeah, especially with a giant camera in your way too.
But you're right. It's certainly the hardest paint job I do in my life for the moment. I don't know for the future, but it's interesting to do it because I think
it'll make you a better painter. and one of the reasons we have the camera literally, like I said, inches from Laurent's nose is that you get to see exactly what he's seeing. I've been to master classes where I've had to look over the shoulders of people, and it's very difficult because you're kind of standing over to the side, you're looking at it from the side, they're looking at it straight on. It's kind of a little bit sometimes hard to see what's going on. So this is a lot better, to have your eyesight basically.
Yeah, you get my eyes, but I don't have the totality of my eyes. So now we have finished to base coat the mini, and now you can look at all the face and around. Mm-hmm. You can see where eventually you got problems. The first problem you got is this spot of black hair. Mm-hmm. Then you must come back with your base coat for the face and the skin. Now we are painted the hair with pure shadow gray.
Shadow gray, and again, we're not really because we're using black. The coloring technique is going to be a little bit different.
Yeah.
Unlike the rest of the model that we've done so far, where we have to build our shadows and then go back to our highlights. Black is as dark as you can get, so that's basically our shadow already there for us. So instead of going to our shadows, we're just going to start immediately with our first highlight.
Sure.
Which is the...
Try not to put your shadow gray in the deepest area of the shadow. It's not really problematic because you can come back with very diluted black to if you make a mistake. The paint we use is not too much diluted because we don't want it to go in the deepest part of the hair.
Exactly.
And be carefully too, because it is important not to paint the red clockways. You can see for the first coat I'm not really picking a lot of paint because I just want to have a guide for beginning, and I come back after and make the color more intense. But it's important to paint all the area of one hair like I am doing just right now. And you can see that in black we didn't really well see the hair, and then just with one coat,
yeah, it's really starting to stand out.
Here, for example, it is important to make it really bright because it catches the eye. Here, because he is alone, I come with another brush. Oh, sorry. I come with another brush because I make a little mistake.
Okay.
We will really highlight it this part. We'll not highlight it so much this part because it is under the cloth, you know. Right. And we are going to highlight really this part.
Right.
And it will give the depth to this part of the skull job. So now we are going to paint the highlight. We have mixed a little bit of Space Wolf Grey with the Shadow Grey, and we try to fix the paint only at certain specific areas. Perhaps a little bit here, just a little bit. The paint we use is not really diluted a lot. Here we make the choice not to highlight it this hair and this hair. We began just at the point of this one. Just like that.
Perfect.
And we get the depth.
Excellent.
And we do more highlight here. And really a lot here. And this little hair just here. Then I want to highlight just a little bit this part because it is interesting to show it, sorry. And then more highlight just here. And just here. Just here. Interesting too, just here. This one. This one. And more you highlight it, more you reduce the area.
Exactly. And that's a technique you use a lot throughout, to keep reducing your area gradually as you highlight, so that you keep the work that you did before.
Yeah. Here too we just highlighted this part to make the movement. Just a little bit here and here. So now we are going to highlight it a little bit more, only with, or perhaps a little bit, just a little bit of shadow gray, just right here. Just right here. Just a point here, here. Yeah, just a little bit here, just for fun. A little bit here, just that. And we come back and do the same thing a second time to make the color more strong. And after that, I use a little bit of pure Space Wolf Grey. Not too diluted, because I want to spot just a little bit of color, just right here. You see, when we pick the paint, we really see the highlight, and when the paint makes dry,
Mm-hmm.
you can see that it is not so intense.
It dulls.
Yeah,
It's not so intense. Yeah, I noticed that I noticed that a lot when you just freshly painted a mini, you wait a few hours or the next day, it doesn't look nearly as intense or bright as it did the night before. Or
and icing, that we got good hairs here.
Excellent, good job.
So now we are going to base coat the face of the wolf.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's not a problem, because you can, if the paint under is dry, you can put another color on it.
So you're not worried that you're putting paint over over other dried layers of paint? No,
it's not a problem. You know what? Sometimes I keep the same water for different colors, because it's getting some homogenic for all the colors on the mini.
Mm-hmm.
I will put, we see that after, but I will put blue in the shadow of my red, and I will put red in the shadow of the blue-gray, the light blue-gray skin of my wolfen. So if a little bit of the red I use for the clothes is added in my blue, it's not really a problem.
Okay, so as long as you're not worried about it, because I know some painters, they don't like the fact that little dry pieces of paint get on their brush and then it goes on a mini, but you don't have a problem with that.
The only problem you can have, and we can see it, that, and if you get some parts of paint not totally dry, and it is the fact here, that's not a good thing. So we do it again.
So maybe we should completely dry it.
We make it. We recorded.
No, that's fine, because you know what? It's good to get the mistakes, because people want to learn from the mistakes.
Sure. So if your paint is not totally, I get a problem with this one.
Totally dry.
Yeah, totally dry. You got what you see there.
Right there. So basically, you don't want little pieces of dry paint in your paint.
That is catastrophic. If you get some these little pieces of dry paint in your base coat,
it ruins it.
It's
absolutely.
really. So then there
So as long as it's completely 100% dry, let's say overnight or a few hours, it's fine. But better safe than sorry. Maybe just move on to another piece of the palette.
Yeah, sure.
Like a more clean piece, or just wipe it clean and start with the new thing, which is what we're doing here.
Sure. So nothing very complicated, exactly the same way.
Mm-hmm. And so again, you're mixing 1 part water to 1 part
yeah,
paint.
one part water and one approximatively. If you put more water, it takes you more coats.
Okay.
And if you put less water, it takes you less coats. But you could have something more shiny.
Okay.
You know, so for myself, it depends of the painter and it depends of your comfort of working.
Mm-hmm.
For myself, 1 part for the base coat, 1 part of paint,
Water,
1 part of water.
No problem.
And I'm really comfortable with that.
Perfect.
But you know, it's a question of sensation. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I really totally sure about my mix when I took the paint in my brush and see it. I know that there is okay now.
Okay, perfect.
So now same process.
Okay.
This color is really light, so at the first coat you don't totally see it on the mini.
Okay.
But that's not a problem. You do the same thing as a guide for the rest of your paint job. I try to keep it on the face and not on the eyes,
like that. Okay.
and not on the red parts.
Yeah. It's very light, so yeah, it's going on very thin.
Yeah, really
Not
really
very
light,
thick.
really
It's
really
almost
thin.
you almost can't tell that it's even there. Like if you look at the color of the miniature and the white primer, it's almost doesn't disappear. But I guess after a few coats, it's really going to show up.
Yeah, but it is a really light color at the beginning because we are going to work a lot with shadows and not so much with the highlight, because it's much more easy to work with the shadow.
Mm-hmm.
And for my way of thinking, much more interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, that's another particular way I'm painting. I'm using a lot of paint.
Mm-hmm.
So some painters are stick just
Yeah.
this one and retake another and I prefer. It is a little more expensive, but
yeah.
I prefer to have a lot of paint there and come back.
Yeah, it's less frustrating. They have
only,
to keep
yeah.
constantly going back
Yeah.
to your.
But it is my way of doing. But and on the skull job for this face, it is really well sculpted. The definition of the face is really well done on this mini.
Absolutely, it's a beautiful looking.
Oh yeah, it's one of the face I prefer in miniatures, and it is a real pleasure to paint. Because you know some mini give you the way to use the brush.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Sometimes the way the miniature is done, it just kind of helps the direction of your stroke.
Yeah. So at the end, you will see we got different color for this part of the mini,
Okay.
for the nose.
Right.
But for now, we are basing all the mini.
In gray.
Yeah, in gray.
And we saw from the original, the first one that we did, that we are going to go from a black snout
Yeah.
at the mouth into the gray.
Yeah. But we do that after. So I try not to put blue in the eyes. It's not really a problem if you put a little bit, but for the eyes, I prefer to have the white primer.
Right.
So here we are. We are the first base coat.
Perfect. Great.
So now we can prime the other part of the skin, like the legs and
the arm as well. Right?
Yeah.
So basically, it's gonna base coat exactly the same way as the face.
Same way.
Perfect.
All the skin parts are the same color for the moment. Some parts will change after, but for the moment, the same color.
Perfect. And that's just the foot there.
Yeah.
Right. That's the heel of the foot.
And you can see there, I'm not totally primed the foot, okay? As you see,
Right.
we really see the metal, but it's not a problem, you know. Look.
Yeah, I noticed that. Like here's a place, a perfect example of where the primer didn't reach the metal, and that's not a problem. We can just go right over with the paint.
It works. Like you can see here.
And then this is the other leg, and then we're doing the foot on the other leg there.
Yeah.
So this is the other foot.
You see there.
Yeah.
And the no problem with the paint.
No problem. Oh yeah, look at that. And just I can see the primer didn't get there, but it's no problem.
There is certainly a little bit of prime, you know, and
right.
it is sufficient
right.
for my blue gray to stick.
To stick in there. Perfect.
Yeah. Look at that. Just one coat.
Yeah, perfect. Excellent. Just one. Look at that. It's alright. You can see as it's drying, it's perfect. It's gonna really look nice.
And then you see here we got a real white. Yeah.
So
right.
That's an area that you'll have to go over a couple times to get rid of that.
Yeah, it's not a problem. But you see, here you got much more white.
Yeah.
It stick really well together, but you got not so much white here, but it stick.
Absolutely.
And with the second, we have the color.
Absolutely. Awesome.
So the white primer is important, but it is not totally necessary to get all the mini really white.
Right.
Just what we need for the paint to stick.
To stick. Perfect.
So we apply the second
coat.
Yeah. Yeah, I got too much paint there.
Okay, so, and what kind of problem might that cause when you have too much paint?
If you put a lot of paint like that here, for example, this part, when it makes dry, you can have something, I don't know the word, but it makes
it very apparent that there's a border there. You could see where it dried.
Yeah.
So that's not a good idea to have a lot of paint because it'll dry and it'll leave behind like a border or like a mark of where it was. So even the base coat will do something like that. So it's very important.
No, the rest of the paint job will do the same thing if you know. For all your painting process, you must avoid to do something like that.
So basically, you never want the paint to pool in one area. You never want it to just sort of to have a lot of paint in one small little area.
No, because you lose the details with that, and then you get these.
I think they call it stains. You see like you see the stain of where it dries, the border of where it dries.
Yeah, so you can see that this color is much more covering than the red, because with two coats we really have a real good
complete coverage.
Then same thing, we let it dry a second time. We began to have something really colorful, you know, something. Oh, I got
we just take that out. Perfect. So for the purpose of this video, we've actually gone a little bit darker with the base coat, just so it shows up a little bit better on the video. We actually prefer the original color, but just for the purpose of this video, we're going to go a little bit darker so you can see the features a little bit more. So we've added a little bit of the shadow gray, and you can see the mix right here to just give it just a slightly cooler, darker look.
Adding a little bit of this color, Dark Flesh from Games Workshop. It's again, you can see when I mix it here, it's again a sort of red-brown. Then we will find in the shadow of the skin something remembering the color of the cloak.
Okay. Something similar to the color of the cloak, so we got some more harmony with it.
Yeah. So it's It's relatively simple to find where you must put your shadows on the face. First thing is under the eyes. For the moment we have a really light shadow, and we applied this third really light shadow. Not really painting, just seeing where we must after.
Right. So you're just putting it where you think the shadows should fall.
Yeah.
Again.
You can see it's really light.
Yeah.
But it is here.
Barely showing up.
Put it here under the eye. It's no problem if you put a little too much paint on this part, for example, because we are coming back after with the base coat and the highlight.
Okay.
And it's not a problem because this first shadow is really light.
Perfect.
But you begin by adding a little bit of shadow around this eye, a little bit more here, over the eye, but under the cloak. Keep that in mind. You got to make it here. And you can use the skill job as a guide for your painting.
Absolutely. The model will tell you where the shadows need to be.
Yeah, particularly on this mini, you know, the model tell you where you must paint. You can do the same thing we told before. Put the mini under a bright light.
And then see where the shadows fall.
Yeah, and you see automatically where the shadows and where the highlights are. Put it here. So we are not going to work on this part of the mini because we are going to paint it another color.
Okay.
We can if we want, but there will be another color on it, so it's not necessary. So you see here under the eye, here we got a little bit of shadow here. Here is possible too. Here it is really well defined with defined with the sculpt. So we accentuate it, and if we accentuate the shadow here, we reinforce we make stronger. This part of the mini, which gives the face something really animal, you know, something really aggressive. This part of the nose is really remind us that it is an animal.
Right.
So if we make stronger this shadow, we make stronger the effect of the skill job.
Excellent.
I don't know if you see it properly.
Absolutely.
Yeah, sure. So other thing, you must do the same thing here because it is normally under this part of the cloak, so it is in the shadow too.
Right under the forehead.
And you got a real cool area to make a real cool blending. And we like to do real blending. So you can see I didn't take any risk with this first color, because if I make a mistake, it is so light that I can come back with my base coat
and fix it up if you need to.
Yeah.
Right. And that's where the whole patience thing comes in, because you know sometimes you gotta try a color and see if it works.
Sure.
If it's not working for you, you can get darker or lighter or whatever you need to do.
Yeah, you're totally right. Of course, I know the color I use, so I know the result at the end. But when you want, it could be something interesting sometime, you know, to try to mix color each other, to take a mini just for fun, and to try some mix. Sometimes you get really good surprise.
Right.
With this kind of
experimenting.
Yeah. So for the moment, I think my color works.
Yeah, it looks like it's working really well.
It's really light, but it becomes a little bit more definition than before. I think I don't have make any mistakes with the place I wanna pose my color. You can, like I say, we are going to paint this part in another color, but just for fun we can
just to highlight.
Yeah, and just to show.
And because the face is so symmetrical here, we're really only going to do just half the face.
Yeah.
Because the other side of the face is exactly the same. So if you can do one side of the face, you can easily do the other.
Yeah, and in fact, when we finish the shadows, so I put a little bit of paint on the hair. It's not a problem because we can base a second time the hair, but you can took when you make this kind of mistake, you can took a brush with a little bit of water.
Yeah, just a clean brush with water only.
And pass it on the mistake up
yeah.
to clean.
Yeah, and the brush will just absorb the extra paint.
Yeah, before it dries, of course.
That's a good thing to keep handy, just a brush with a little wet brush, just absorb some of that paint.
So you know, when we finish this, just this part of the mini with the shadow, you can see the difference between the part without any shadow.
Absolutely.
And then we can we just with one coat we begin to see it.
Yeah.
Then when you have put your first coat, you can dilute it a little bit more because you want that the paint
soft,
yeah,
soft look to it. You can dilute more and more as you go on, so that you don't get such a harsh shadow. So this is the second application.
Yeah, second application, but I'm putting a little bit more water, but
a little bit more water.
The final dilution I use now for the second part is less diluted than the first one, because I want the color to be more present, you know.
No problem.
At this step here. We have just defined the places where we want to put the color at the first coat. At this second coat, we began to try to give it more color. And then I don't know what you are thinking about it, but I really like the way this light brown red is working with the gray blue.
Yeah, absolutely, it looks gorgeous.
Okay, something you must know, I like to pass my brush on this face of this wolf, and because it's really a pleasure to paint it. You don't need to do so much to it, if you don't
absolutely.
want. It only the result you want. But here,
sometimes it's a good idea to blow on the mini to help it dry faster, and sometimes to help it dry where you want the paint to dry.
Yeah, sure.
So there's the straight on. You can see from the left to the right side what a difference it's already making just by adding a very light shadow already. Wow, that makes a pretty dramatic difference.
Only with adding more and more dark flesh in our base coat mix.
Okay, and this is going to be another application of shadows for the face.
Now we are coming with something really much more reddish, you know.
Absolutely.
And then the real color job began.
Absolutely.
So we're working on smallest area for the moment than on the first coat. Always because we don't want to make mistakes, if possible.
Now, this is a technique that a lot of painters call complementary color shading, where they use a complementary color, the color that's somewhere on the opposite side of the color wheel, to produce shadows for the color that they're using as a base coat.
Yeah.
It's a very popular technique, and rather than just using black in your shadows, sometimes adding color adds a lot richer effect to the shadows.
Totally. You will see at the end of the paint job that the color, shadow and highlight, because we are going to do something special with the highlight too, are really colorful and really adding some character to the face of this
beautiful
little wolf. there just with the first, the second coat, you begin to have really a colorful skin.
Yeah, it's really coming out there. Wow, I can't wait to see when it's finished.
So we do the same thing on heavy parts of the Mini. For the moment, we don't want to make it too much colored, so we are working on smallest area than compared to the first coat we have done before.
You want to keep some of that original shadow gray that you used, and not completely go over it.
You know, when it will be totally finished, we certainly didn't see anything of the base coat. We have here something interesting, you know. We can make it later with something much colorful and more dark. But it's interesting to begin to define it now, because it will accentuate the aggressivity of the face. And we can work with this part of the Mini, this area I'm just painting now. We can begin with more shadows, because it is more dark here, and there is more shadow than another part. Right there here, for example, because this part is not covered by that.
Absolutely.
Same thing here. Oh, I like this color.
And again, we're working with transparency here.
Yeah,
very light colors, very dilute.
Yeah.
That are helping us that are always allowing us the base coat to show through, so that the work we put in the beginning doesn't completely disappear.
I think it's really much more visible here than on the clock, for example.
Yeah,
absolutely. On the
absolutely.
Because these colors are really smooth for that.
Oh yeah, very nice.
Then you see, I pass and pass and pass only on certain area near the eyes, because I want that the eyes of this wolfen make scary people who look at it. So we began here real work for this kind of thing. Same thing, you can do the same job here, not important, but because we do something else. But if you want to do it just only in one color, you must paint here and here, and you can add something here like that to
make a separation between
to make the separation
and the cheekbone there.
With the it's not a problem if you got a little bit of paint here, because we can come back with the black after, and only with two different steps of shadow.
Look at that!
I think
what a difference. Wow.
You get the face.
Wow, that is really good. Okay, so you're adding now a little bit more dark flesh.
Yeah.
For those people who are interested in painting competition minis, they could have taken a few more steps before they went to a solid dark flesh.
They could, but you know, we certainly have different effect here. The final shadows will be deepest. You can see it now, just now.
Exactly. Yeah, they're just showing up. Yeah, absolutely.
Perhaps, certainly, for this area, for example, it will be interesting. It would be interesting to have done much more step, but we can do something correct only with this one.
I mean, you could literally spend a whole day on this face if you wanted.
Sure.
And some people that
be careful not to do too much.
Yeah.
Sometimes too much is killing.
Too much will kill your mini. That's right.
But you know, it's interesting to make it that way, because we could see that it works. With just 3 steps, it really works. And then we are going to do one other step after with another color. So now we are going to mix a little bit of dark flesh with a little bit of bleach purple.
Bleach purple, okay.
You have seen just a little bit of bleach purple?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow, what a colorful color.
Really, yeah, exactly. So it's basically the same dark flesh we were using for the shadows.
Yeah.
With just a little bit more bleach purple in there to give a really nice, darker, richer shadow.
Yeah. At this step, I take a finest paint, a finest brush. Finest brush, because I'm just gonna put that
in the very small spots.
Yeah, in very small area.
We're just adding a little bit of bleach purple into the original dark flesh wash there we were putting into the shadows. And he's using a very, very fine brush to go right into the shadows, to add like a little more richness to the shadows, a little more depth and darkness. And he's careful not to go too crazy with that, because otherwise that will kind of get rid of the effect that we had put in there before. So again, only in the very, very deepest shadows are we going to put this bleach purple dark flesh color.
You know, the size of the brush is not really important. In fact, it's the sharp.
Yeah, the sharpness, the point.
Sharpness, the point. Yeah, I was looking for this one.
Yeah, and we're still maintaining the same dilution, about 2 or 3 parts water to paint.
Yeah, we have the same dilution.
Exactly. In fact,
perhaps a little bit less.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah,
in fact,
maybe.
We've been pretty consistent with the dilution throughout the entire paint process.
So we can make it more stronger here. We can have another step, for example, with only bleach purple if you want. You can add a little bit of dark, of black if you want in it. You can use, for example, midnight blue.
Right.
Something in the same range of color we got. Blue, red, brown, purple.
Yeah.
All those colors are working together. So on this part, blue or purple
will work very well.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
And I think you've done a very good job with the shadows there. I think it really works with the cloak and the face. It looks great. So now we began to highlight it with this color. It's the it's the light blue gray. So I really diluted much more. You know, really like milk. You know, we can say that. Like milk, yeah, absolutely. Very diluted. This is for the first highlight application.
So, same process for the highlight. We try to keep the parts of the mini which are receiving the more light. Absolutely. By definition, it's the highlight. So we work carefully at the beginning.
That's why it's important to keep it very dilute, because you can obviously see that some of our brushstroke is going over the shadow a bit, but we don't want to lose that shadow we worked so hard on. So making a very dilute highlight helps us keep those shadows. And again, if we are a little over aggressive, we can always go back and fix those shadows as well.
And you know, you pick it at certain areas and you look how it works before to continue, you know. So this part of the nose receives a lot of light. So we are going to really work on this part of the mini too.
Yeah, right at the bridge of the eyebrows.
You can see we are going like that. So the first shadow we use is under, and you can see it by transparency if you are really good diluting your paint. And that's the reason why at the end you certainly don't see the base coat, because we are working on all the areas of the mini with the other color, the
Right.
color for the shadow and the color for the highlights.
Absolutely.
But the base coat will be visible by transparency. You can accentuate on this part because it is a little muscle you got here, and
Right.
it is interesting to make it pop. So same thing here. We can begin in the shadows, in the first shadow, and come to the most highlighted part.
Exactly.
Highlight.
And we went ahead and finished the other half of the face for you guys.
Yeah.
Because it works pretty much like the other side of the face. There's really nothing new that you're learning there. So we just sort of, through the magic of editing, have just skipped ahead a little bit here.
And you can see I have made here a little mistake. My shadow began too early on the nose, you know.
Right.
And I will try to
Exactly.
solve the problem with my first highlight.
Absolutely, and it's a good for our beginners and some of our even some of our veteran viewers here to see how you go about fixing mistakes like that.
You know, these kind of mistakes are not really a problem because you can see.
Yeah, you've almost fixed it right there. Yeah, exactly.
You can come back with your first base coat if you are not sure of you, but you know, the problem isn't visible now.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So now we are using the same color but a little bit less diluted because we have fixed the part of the mini where we want to begin sorry, the highlighted. Now we want to fix the color. Same way we do for the shadow.
Perfect. So this is just the same color for the highlight, just less diluted with water.
A little bit less, not really less, but
just a little, a little bit.
Yeah, you could see it's more colorful now.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, you could achieve the exact same result by passing the brush over the same area many times.
Yeah.
But this is just a little faster way of working.
Yeah. You know, it's not really so well blended as it can be for the moment, but with the second color and the first mix we use for highlighted, it will be much more blended and much more smooth.
So this is for our next highlight stage, and we're going to mix what's called ivory white with the original blue that we had there.
Yeah.
And ivory white is another Prince August color.
Yeah.
It's kind of like bleached bone, just a little bit less saturated.
This color is a little bit yellow, you know, just a little bit, light yellow, and it is a little bit more warm. For the moment we have worked with cold colors, and then we began to add a little bit more warmness at this face. I particularly want to work on this part because this part is receiving a lot of light.
Exactly. It's the bridge of the nose that receives most of the light.
And those parts too. Well, like I said before, you can dilute it a little bit more, and the blending could be a little bit more precise than compared to what I've done just now. Always because of I got the cam just before my nose, and I don't exactly see all of the movement I do.
Exactly. And I think
but it is correct, I think, but it could be more smooth.
Much more smoother, exactly. And our viewers will be able to achieve a much smoother result because they won't have that camera in front of their face.
Yeah. you can try. It's difficult, but just to add a little bit of paint. I don't know the word for this part of the face.
Eyelid.
Yeah.
Yeah, the lids of the eyes. Want to fix your frame just a bit there? There we go. Right, so those are the lids of the eyes that we're working on now. Just adding a little bit of highlight because eyelids will catch the light just a bit.
Yeah.
So it's important to kind of bring them out. They'll help the eye come out a lot more too.
You know, it begins to be more smoother with a lot of pass of the paintbrush, of the brush.
Okay, so that's our our second highlight application there.
Yeah.
With a little bit of the blue and the ivory, ivory white.
Yeah.
So this is our third application of highlights coming up, and this is going to be pure ivory.
So we try to reduce the area.
The area, yes, absolutely.
We are going to paint. And we began to calculate it, specific area where we want to put more light. This one, here and here, this part here, for example, just here. Just here. Come back here, and here, here again.
Very nice.
We got it.
Absolutely. Excellent. So there ends our third application. So now that we've finished the third application with the pure ivory white, Laurent's going to go in with pure white this time, Skull White from Games Workshop.
Yeah.
And the dilution isn't so important on this one. He's diluted it just a little bit only. But the thing is, he's only going to put it in very specific strategic areas where he thinks that the light is most important. So this isn't one of those highlight stages where he puts, over a large surface area.
And here we go.
Excellent.
Okay, now we are going to do the eyes. We want to have really flashy eyes.
Mm-hmm.
So we are beginning to do something, mixing those two colors to have bright orange.
Bright orange eyes, okay.
Yeah. The reason why we use these two one and make our orange and not using another orange is that we use after the golden yellow, and we use after to the first highlight, and after we use the blood red to
add a little bit of a glow.
Yeah.
Okay, exactly. So instead of using just one color, you've used two to mix. So just taking one or the other you can use as a highlight or a shadow or a glow.
You can use blazing orange, for example, what you want, but I prefer to do my own mix.
And what about the white there?
And the white is for the highlighting and to
put a light point in the eyes,
just a light
because
point.
we are not going to paint pupils on the eyes,
Right.
because we prefer to give it a look really aggressive.
Aggressive, yeah, scary kind of look. Okay, great, fantastic.
So I take a little bit of red. I take a little bit of golden yellow.
Okay, so that's blood red and golden yellow.
Yeah. And I mix the two. Okay, it is too reddish.
Too reddish, yeah.
Yeah.
Blood red is a very strong color, you'll find out.
Yeah.
And that's the thing with most paint. Even most painters say that painting with red is very difficult. Because red is such a strong color.
It's a really difficult color.
You really need a lot of practice with reds.
Yeah. Oh, with red, with black, with white.
Yeah.
White and black are really difficult colors to paint. We got a sympathetic orange here.
Okay.
And we're gonna use this one.
Perfect.
We are not diluting so much as for the other part, because we are painting a really little area.
Mm-hmm. And we're not really using transparency because we don't really want that base coat to show up in the eye anyways. Exactly.
Okay, you can see just with this orange.
Just with that already, it's coming.
It's coming alive. Yeah. So it's not taking much time. So we are going to do the same here. So don't worry if you make a little mistake sometimes with the orange on the other part. You can come back.
Exactly as we did before with a wet brush and just scoop things up.
Always keep that in mind. It's not catastrophic if you do a little mistake.
And again, I could see Lawrence shaking a little bit there, but again, that's just because
it's not easy there, because it needs more precision to do what I'm doing.
Exactly.
So we finished this one. It is more easier for me.
Exactly. So we'll just work on the right eye there, and we'll show you guys either at the beginning of this video or at the end Lawrence a normal working position in his normal working area, so you can get an idea of how he normally works.
So we try to have an homogenic orange on all the pupil, all the eye, all the globe of the eye. Okay. Here it is. Look, only with that. Wow. We are going to use
just the pure red there.
Pure red.
Pure blood red.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
very diluted.
Very diluted, because we want to make. Because we want now to make just a little line under.
Right under the eye.
With red. For that, you can use. I don't know the word. Anchor.
Anchor?
Yeah, it's. I'm not sure. We talk about this after.
Yeah.
So now you try to put your red.
Perfect. Look at that.
No problem if you make the mistake and if your red goes on the orange, because we come back with orange after.
Yeah, but it's really helping that eye just come right out. Wow. Great.
This part is really important too, near the nose. Here, just here. We got it. Then now we come back with our orange.
Wow.
We got it.
Perfect.
Now we are going to use pure yellow. On these little parts, we don't need to blend it so much.
Okay. And this is with pure golden yellow now.
Yeah.
There we go.
Not need. I diluted just a little bit, but really just a little bit. and we got it.
Perfect. Look at that. Wow. Very nice.
So now
So what? Okay. What are we doing here now?
we are painting a little spot of white.
Into the eyes.
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect.
So now we are going to paint a little spot of white in the eyes
Okay.
to simulating the light reflection.
Light reflection. Point light reflection.
So now you could dilute it just a little bit
Exactly.
because you just want to
That little point.
pop a little point.
Exactly. And this is an artistic technique that many artists use whenever they're painting something like a globe or a mirror or something like that.
We got it.
Exactly.
Finished. No
Perfect.
more. Nothing more.
Excellent. Looks incredible. Wow.
And you can see just with this eye the difference between
Yeah, you could
the
show,
step before and
yeah,
the
you
step
could just,
after.
if you want to just turn it there and show some of our viewers there from one side
We
to
have
the
just
next,
the base coat of
you
the
get
eyes,
a
yeah.
huge difference there between one side and the eye, and you can see that this thing is just coming to life now. Like, wow, incredible, great job. So we're using what is this color here?
I don't know, the color we're using to begin the nose is
Bronze
and
flesh.
flesh.
Bronze flesh, perfect.
Games Workshop. Really good color.
Okay.
I like this one. So we are going to make something well blended.
Okay, and I see you're using a very dilute as
Yeah,
well.
like milk again.
Like milk again.
Yeah.
Okay. So about
We
4.
began with that, and after we see if it needs
more
more,
dilution.
more dilution. I think it is a good for beginning. So now we are beginning. You see with the dilution.
Yeah, it's barely showing up, but eventually it will. Exactly.
Yeah.
Much like most of our painting so far.
And then you begin where you have stopped the highlighted of the other part of the face.
Exactly. Which is why we never really worked on the bottom half of the face, because we were going to color it a different color.
Yeah. Same thing with the mouth.
Under the chin and the front part of the mouth. Hopefully.
Okay, if you put paint on this part, it's not really a problem because
We're going to color black.
yeah.
Exactly.
So I always prefer not to put paint where I don't want it to. And at the end, you mustn't see the blue-gray under. Hop. Be careful of those kind of thing, you know, accumulation of paint.
Little paint right there. That
Yeah.
you see
So
right
now you
there.
can come back with your paint and
just get it out of there. Yeah.
yeah. Too late. No. Not problem. It's not.
It's not so strong.
Yeah, not so strong.
But exactly, that's something that most people want to try to avoid: accumulation of paint, because it sometimes it adds too strong of that color that you're working with.
Yeah.
It gets rid of the transparency underneath.
Look at that. If you are not totally satisfied with the area where the two are mixing, you can come after with a little bit of your base coat color to finally blend it.
To do a final blending in there. Absolutely.
So you can make this part stronger because we are going to.
Yeah, the black is going to be on the nose, so
the black
it's actually a bit of separation.
And we are going to paint shadows with this color too.
So you want a little bit stronger there.
Yeah.
The yellow.
So it's correct for this part here.
Okay.
You got a good base coat.
So we're going to go ahead and add some dark flesh now to the yellow, and use that as a shadow for our nose.
Yeah.
And that'll help to, and the reason we're adding dark flesh is because we've used dark flesh in other parts of the miniature. And this, again, we're trying to create harmony between all the colors.
That's right. So we try to accentuate here, you know, near the nose. So now we are working on specific areas. The mouth, near the nose. And under the mouth. You must paint this part too.
Perfect.
So the parts under, you know, are in the shadow always. So that I don't move here because I don't want to get out of frame, but you must paint under like that.
Mm-hmm.
Accentuate this here, and you can do this here, just on this part here, you know.
Right.
Don't touch this one because we are beginning the highlight after with that.
Right.
Because when you're looking like this, and if you put the first highlight here, it will be very cool to see. So now it's okay for my first shadow here.
So now we're starting with the final the shadow.
Yeah.
Final shadow of the of the mouth, which is pure dark flesh.
Yeah.
Very diluted as before as well.
Yeah, very diluted, not to make a mistake, because you can really see the color. You know,
Yeah,
dark flesh is really visible.
It's a very intense color.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Perfect.
And I think it's okay here.
That looks really good.
So now we are going to highlight.
So this is our first highlight for
Yeah,
the
yeah.
muzzle.
We are going only to do two.
Only 2 stages. Okay.
Yeah. It is a really fast work because we don't have a big area to highlight. Only this part here is necessary, and then after I show you just for the lip, but it's the same way. Then we try to do a little blended line near the line of deepest shadow we got just here, you know, and it make it stand out a little more.
Right.
Then the point of the brush is really important for that.
Looking very nice.
We use a really very diluted paint.
Very
So-
good, exactly. And you can see that Lauren is not depositing that much paint onto the mini. You're not seeing the paintbrush leave behind droplets of paint. It's almost not even noticeable.
You're right. Now here you can see
Exactly.
it is a little
You
bit
got
too
away
much.
from you
So
there. Yeah, exactly. And you're gonna take it away with another brush. Exactly.
you can come and finally blend it. It is another technique. A lot of people use that. They take a second brush.
Mm-hmm.
They make it wet,
Mm-hmm.
and they come back.
And they just spread the. paint.
Yeah,
Right.
to
Yeah.
blend. It's a
Exactly.
technique very used too. I do that when I think my color is too strong on a certain area. But
Yeah.
you must do it very quickly
Very quickly.
before the paint dries.
And you can see how quickly the paint dries, almost like in a few seconds.
Yeah, when you get the good dilution, you can see it
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know the word, but
Exactly. Oh, the water dries so fast, so diluted paint will dry extremely fast.
it is certainly accentuated because we have a real big light. Just
Exactly, a nice hot light right there to help dry it.
But you could see certainly it depends from the weather too.
Mm-hmm.
If it's cold or
Yeah,
if it's warm,
yeah, exactly.
the paint takes more time or less to dry. I think it's sufficient here.
Absolutely.
Now we are going to paint the muzzle. So we have diluted really diluted the water, the paint with water, because we want to blend this part, you know, and to make the color stronger when it comes here.
Right. So I can see that you're pushing the paint down.
Yeah,
at the tip
yeah.
of the nose, 'cause you don't
It's
want-
really important, you know, for blending to push the paint at the beginning of the place you want to blend
Right.
to the place where the color must be stronger.
The strongest, right?
So the first steps.
The first, you can see exactly the first application of that. It almost disappeared. It almost doesn't even look like
Yeah.
you did anything.
Yeah. Something I'm often doing, and it's not a good thing, you know, I like to come and pass and pass. It is not the best way. If you pass one time, you blow or you let it dry, then you pass another time. It is more efficient.
Mm-hmm.
So I try to make that it's better. Because when you pass and repass, you are moving the paint you have.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're just moving the paint around, and sometimes it creates an undesirable stroke.
Don't forget to paint this area. It's very important to make it
Really stand out.
near the shadow we have done before with the dark flash. And naturally under here.
Absolutely. Watch your frame there.
Now you can see it's coming.
Yeah, absolutely. You can really make out that is really turning out well.
Same thing. When you have practiced those kind of thing a lot, you can do it really faster with not so much dilution, perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
But here I prefer to show with a carefully technique, because when you begin in painting, it's really disappointed when you
Exactly.
miss something because you go too fast.
Exactly.
So I prefer to dilute it a bit more,
Mm-hmm.
and it's better for the blending,
Exactly.
and to take my time.
Exactly. Patience is the key here. And
Yeah, certainly in natural condition I do that faster,
absolutely.
but here I prefer to show you how to do it carefully and how to avoid the problems you could have.
Absolutely.
So here we began to have a good muzzle. So now we have mixed a little bit of Chaos Block with our dark gray, the dark gray we use at the for base coat, and we are going to paint.
Right into the shadow.
Yeah, just under the muzzle here.
Just to give that muzzle just a
Just a little bit. It's just because we want to have a little shadow here, and we could do with very diluted paint. Sorry, just right here because we are going to
Give it really that 3D look.
Yeah, and we are going to put an highlight just here.
Absolutely. Yeah, just give it a little bit of a bumpy look right there.
Yeah, but it's really, 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 you know, thin because we don't want to
Don't want to make it
to make the
strong.
transition
Too strong.
Yeah, too strong.
Absolutely.
You see the difference between
Yeah, I
the
can
two?
see it. Absolutely, it really is sticking out more.
Okay, now we are going to put a little bit of highlight just on the top of the muzzle.
Okay.
Just right. Yeah, we use for that a little bit of Codex Gray.
Just pure Codex Gray.
Yeah, pure Codex Gray. I'm not sure if it is the right color. Yeah, it seems. I have diluted it a little bit too much.
Okay.
So I take a little bit of paint
Mm-hmm.
and I come back.
Yeah. Just a little touch.
As you see, just a little touch. Be carefully with that part.
Exactly.
And we got it.
Perfect. So now we're doing the, this is the first base coat that we're going to be using for the sword, and again we're using a very, a dilution of hot turquoise and French mirror blue.
Always the same thing. You can use real good dilution,
Right.
or you can dilute it less if you want to have something good, much easier, much faster, more faster.
Absolutely.
So we have had a little bit of hawk turquoise in French mirror blue, which is a blue gray.
Mm-hmm.
So nothing really special here. The aim is to have a good base coat to work after with. Keep in mind to wait for between two coats.
For it to dry.
Yeah, for it to dry. Not doing what I'm doing just right now.
Don't do what I do, do what I say.
Yeah.
Exactly. Do you like the frame there? The frame? Yeah, perfect.
We get something good for beginning there.
Perfect. Yeah, so we're adding a little bit of, what color is that?
It is a pale color. It is sort of purple blue.
Purplish blue.
Yeah,
and
purplish blue, very desaturated.
And this is one of those parts of the Mini that you can spend a lot of time on.
Yeah,
Because
sure.
weapons are something that most people look at anyways. They draw a lot of attention. It's a real centerpiece of the Mini.
Yeah.
This actual piece uses some pretty advanced techniques. A lot of color mixing, a lot of transparency shading, a lot of complementary coloring, and it's a good place for us to show you because it's a really simple piece, but very complicated coloring.
Totally. Here you can see the color is coming. This part is a little bit hard, so I take my mix I take a little part of my mix out of the general mix.
Okay.
I add a little bit more of water.
Water, exactly.
And I come back just here to blend the two.
Oh, perfect. Look at that.
Take your time for this part. It is this part of the Mini here, and in general for weapons, is important. This one is in front of the Mini.
Exactly.
So
like you said, a real centerpiece for the
yeah,
Mini. You know, it really completes a Mini.
So we must do something really attractive for the eye. We began to have the, you know, the wave here.
Yeah, absolutely. I can actually see it coming through. Well, it's looking really good.
Here it is really a matter of patience, a question of patience.
Absolutely.
You must take your time.
Absolutely. I can already see you've probably put about 10 coats on that.
You can do it faster. There is
absolutely.
no problem. I can dilute less than that, but I prefer to see
Absolutely.
the thing I want to see appear just a little bit at each time to be sure. Yeah. After that, when you practice a lot, when you know how the paint is working, when you know really how the colors are working together, you can do this kind of thing really more fast.
Absolutely.
But at the beginning, take your time.
Exactly. And complementary color shading is one of those techniques where you really do have to be very careful with how much paint you're applying, because you never know how the colors are going to work together.
Do you see how we began to have a really good effect?
It's wonderful. It's wonderful.
You can do something like that too. It could be really interesting. Just paint something darker here.
Absolutely. Just right along the edge, just to give it a nice little hint of an edge.
And same thing here.
So you're gonna add a little bit of black here,
just a little bit,
just a hint of black.
Use it very carefully. It's just to give a little bit more contrast, you know.
Absolutely, and this is a color that you have to be very careful with. Black.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I'm not someone who's particularly fond of black shadows. I mean, a lot of miniature painters don't really like black shadows. I think the reason is because natural lighting, if you view a miniature in the day or under natural lighting conditions, it already creates black shadows.
Yeah.
And adding your own black shadows only sort of makes those areas even darker than they should be. Which is myself, I prefer colored shadows.
Yeah, it is more interesting.
Exactly.
I don't know the exact word. More rich color.
Yeah, it's a more rich color. And so you're gonna add.
So now you can see we are accentuating a little bit certain area. This part, just I really want to make this part stand out, because we are going to make a white point after, white line there.
Exactly.
And the opposition of the two will be really fresh.
Really fresh. And
yeah.
nice. Yeah.
And then we, with that way of painting, we could have the real effect of reflection.
Exactly.
I think for the moment we got something interesting.
Really nice. That looks beautiful.
We have had another type of blue in our base coat, a little bit more green. Anyway, it's really this one is really good working with green, and it is important for the rest because we are going to add green effects with washes at this part of the Mini.
Basically what we've done is we've taken the base coat and added a little bit of dark green to it.
So now we try not to paint off this part, because after that we'll
separate it with a nice little bit of white.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And you can, just with one coat, be coming to see that. Yeah. We see that there is another color there.
Absolutely.
After that, you can paint this part. If we get the time, we show it. It's not very long to show. You can paint this part in gold, and the green you get around the gold make it pop up.
Really? Wow. Yeah, green and gold seems to work very well together.
Yeah, yeah.
You'll find a lot of that.
Green and blue and gold are working well together. Green is a mix of yellow and blue.
Exactly. You'll see a lot in other miniatures where they'll have the hilts. There's always a little bit of rust right around the hilt.
Yeah.
A little bit of blue or a little bit of green.
Yeah,
really makes it just really pop. Right at the where the gold and the hilt meet the blade.
Sure, you're right. So you began to see the color appear.
Absolutely.
Always same thing. We work with a really good dilution because we don't want to make mistakes, and we want that this part finally real well blended.
Exactly, and you can see Laurent is doing the same technique where he's taking color and pushing it back into where the color is supposed to be deposited.
And you see, because I'm pushing the pigments. You see, here it is stronger than there. That is what I want, because I want that this part come from our base coat to the darker. That's why we are using good dilution.
And I know it doesn't sound very intuitive, because most people are used to sort of going the other way. When you do with a pencil or a pencil crayon, those people who are used to that medium, generally you start dark and then you kind of lift off and get lighter towards the end of your stroke. But in paint it's a little different, because if you do that, then the paint sort of ends up being deposited where you finish your stroke.
The rules you have to know is to push your paint, push your pigment where you want that the shadows will be the darker. To be patient, to wait for making dry between two passes, and to come back and come back and come back. Same thing here than we do here. Take a little bit of your color, dilute it a little bit more, and blend the transition to make it smoother.
Absolutely. That's right. If you ever find that you get into a situation where maybe the transition is a little too sharp, just take a little bit of paint off to the side of whatever shadow or highlight you're working with, dilute it a little bit more with water just to blend it a little bit nicer.
That is not an universal rule, it's my way to paint.
Absolutely.
So now we are going to begin the highlights, adding a little bit of fortress gray in our base coat mix. We are going to highlight this part and this part,
okay,
and this part, and here. For beginning, I use something really near to my base coat,
okay,
really diluted, and work carefully. You can see that the edge becomes just a little bit more light.
Yeah, absolutely. You can totally see that. Just a hint. Yeah, like look at that. It's totally. And again, you're blowing on each pass as well.
I'm blowing because I don't want that we got some peaks of pigments and things like that here.
Exactly.
So now
really helps the
doing the same thing here very carefully.
Very carefully.
Because it is so little. Doing that after on the sharper pass here.
Absolutely.
It's more easier to do it not with the, of course, with
the brush.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a technique that you can apply to, especially if you're doing any kind of space marines. You'll notice that, like when they do their helmets, and their boots, and their armors, just using the edge of the brush really helps.
So here it is very long to do because we used a really good dilution. You can do it more faster.
Exactly.
But I don't want to make a mistake. Don't forget this little part here. At this time with the second highlight we began to do something more strong on specific areas, like this one and this one, for example. We are going to come after with washes of different color, but certain areas need to be really more highlighted. So be patient.
Absolutely.
It is the secret of the good blending.
Exactly.
If you're going too fast, you get the effect at a certain distance, but not close, not closer.
Exactly, and we want these miniatures to look good, very close up.
Yeah, the blending is a question of dilution and patience. For blending, when you can see just after the pass of the brush your paint dry. Like that, you get a good dilution.
Yeah.
That's a good indication. At the beginning it is hard to find, but when you know it, when you find it,
exactly,
it goes along. Look.
Yeah, look at that.
And it's done. Of course you can blow on it to make it more faster. I like that to see the paint dry.
Yeah, it looks very nice.
And the color coming and pass after pass.
Exactly.
You know, we are here really working with a lot of steps because we want to achieve something really good there.
Absolutely.
So it takes time to have the final result. But be sure we'll be very happy when you finish. Now you can see this part of the blade becomes more and more highlighted compared to this part.
Right.
With our first highlight.
Exactly.
Our first highlight is under this part too, but she progressively disappears under the second pass.
And it's very noticeable, and it's really looking good. So this is our third highlight stage on the blade. It's pure Fortress Gray, and we're going to have to be very careful on this particular one because it is pure gray. We don't want to lose any of that beautiful rich color we have underneath. So it's going to be very important to use transparency here to achieve our result.
Yeah, you can to avoid the problem you can have. You can put just a little bit of your precedent color in this gray if you want. I want to begin to work on the sharpest part of the metal to make it really stand out, because the opposition of the shadows and the highlighted make the effect of the metal, you know, like you can see here.
Absolutely.
For something like that, perhaps at the end we will see. Perhaps at the end we will have just a little bit of white, of pure white, but I'm not sure at this time. Just here or here.
You know what? And that's something I noticed that a lot of miniature painters try to avoid is that extremely white highlight, because in reality most highlights are usually always colored.
Yeah.
And of course, unless if you ever go out in the sun and catch the highlights off of a very shiny paint job on a car, those highlights will probably be white. But in most reality, they're usually the color of the light source. So if it's the sun, it's probably going to be yellow, or very close to very bright orange.
Yeah.
And so,
but pure white is really for the extreme highlight.
And you got to be careful, because white's one of those colors, especially when you use it on a highlight, that can really destroy all the work you've done if you use it if you use it too liberally. And there we have it. That's the final highlight of this the sword, and you can see that Lawrence added just a little bit more definition right under the upper part of the blade, right there along, just where the upper part of the blade meets the lower part of the blade. It's just a little bit more definition there. But that's it. That concludes our blade. So now we're just starting on the leather sock, or buckler, I guess, at the heel of the woven's foot here. And Lawrence just putting a base coat down, which was a mixture of the snakebite leather and the brand new Talaran flesh from Citadel Foundation paints.
Yeah, really good colors, because they're covering really well.
Exactly.
With one or two coats.
Exactly. So we'll do about a couple coats on this, just to make a nice smooth base coat.
Yeah.
And you can see how beautiful that color is. It really, shows up well against the leg, and that's going to look really nice.
It is more simple to base coat that, because we can move more. You can move more than I move. You see how with only one coat we get the color.
Yeah, it's looking really nice.
It is the foundation game, workshop paint.
So these are the new paints by Citadel.
Yeah, they have created them especially for gamers. But actually, a lot of painters use them not only for the game, because you have a really faster base coating with that, you know.
Really, yeah, I can see that. It looks very homogenic already.
Yeah,
just with one coat.
Just with one coat.
Wow.
It's not sufficient there, of course, but compared to other base coat we do before, you can see really the difference.
Wow, very nice.
So that with only one coat we have
a really nice base coat.
A really nice beginning. And certainly with only two coats we get something really interesting.
Wow.
Yeah. So now we are using bestial brown for our first shadow.
Exactly. So we're going to go with the bestial brown, as Lawrence said, very diluted. And hopefully that'll be not too strong, and that'll give us a good result for the first shadow phase. And I can already see it's,
And you see the shadow really nice. Working very well together.
Very nice. And that's the good thing about using sometimes a very colorful, dark color. It adds a lot of richness to the shadows, as opposed to just using black or...
No. You know what? We didn't use black on this part.
Excellent.
We will use only browns, different browns, and we will use a little bit of blue after.
Absolutely.
So here, as you can see, the
yeah, it's looking very nice actually. A lot of nice contrast. Sometimes, and that just goes to show you, sometimes just picking the right color,
sure,
you know, the right shadow and the right base coat sometimes produces such a dramatic effect so simply. It makes it just seem almost too easy.
And you know what? Something I never do, but I think it's really a good thing to do. When you find some colors working really well together, you must write it on a paper or having a book for not a book, I don't know the word, but something where you wrote your
write down your own notes just for future reference, so you know what colors work really well together. And
because
these two colors are working.
Because you can trust me. Sometimes I found something, I say, oh, it's really well working. I must write that because I will forget surely, and then I don't write, and
then you forget,
and after,
and then you spend a lot of time experimenting, and you ruin a whole mini because you think you used one color when you really used another. Exactly, and so we're getting a lot better results on this small little piece of leather, this leather buckler, I guess it's called, than we were with the leg, as you can see, which is directly above it.
Sure, but here I know the colors I am using.
Yeah, exactly, and Lauren's very familiar with these type of colors. I mean, that just comes from experience. You know, once you become used to using certain colors, you're going to find that you're going to know what colors work. And even if you take a look at a lot of the other gaming magazines and some of the other pictures that you'll see on the net, you'll find that browns and reds and certain color combinations are used all the time, and there's a reason they're used all the time.
Yeah.
It's because
they
are
working
really well together.
You're totally right. And you will see that here we are going to something really interesting and really fast. We can see that we have here something with the skill job, which is interesting to
it's sort of where the leather's been pulled very tightly in, and it's got a little wrinkle there, so we can heighten that wrinkle by
and
it's little details like that, I think, that really make a miniature stand out, you know?
Yeah.
Especially in the sculpting job, but also in the way that you model it. You know, if there's a detail there, try to make it stand out. Try to give it a little bit more shadow than you're giving the rest.
You're right.
So it doesn't look so flat.
Then now we try to paint around and doing a little lining. So now, nothing exceptional. We do the same thing on a smallest area.
And again, this is the darker wash.
Yeah.
With the bestial brown.
Yeah.
And the what was it? Snake
Scorched brown.
Scorched brown. Sorry.
And just right now you will see it will really fast appear the effect of the second shadow.
And you can see Lawrence being very careful around those wrinkles, and he's going to really accentuate those as well.
I try not to paint on those areas because we will highlight it those one, and this one,
to give it some nice separation.
Of course, after I don't do that here because it's not really easy with the position. You have to do a little bit of lining with a brown, but I show you after.
We'll give it a shot. Yeah, exactly.
We show that after. Yeah, I really like how it becomes.
Yeah, it's really looking.
I really like this color. It's really working together. You can really see with that part the importance of finding the good colors, which are really good acting between themselves.
Exactly, really good interaction with the colors.
You can accentuate here, you know, this part to make it stand out. Accentuate a little bit those little things we are talking
Yeah,
about,
just under the wrinkle there,
yeah,
just to give it a little bit.
Just a little bit.
Okay.
Make it dry.
Yeah.
A little bit more, perhaps, because it is really interesting to see it finished with this effect.
Exactly. And like I said, it's those little details in the sculpture and the painting that really help to sell.
Yeah, because you know it is
Oh, picture frame.
it is natural to have for leather parts at this area near the foot. It is certainly natural to have marks. No, it's not the good word, mark. To have something like that because of the movement,
Exactly.
the position.
Exactly. It's the leather cloth is stretching and it's being pulled taut.
So if we accentuate it a little bit, it stands out, and we see the movement of the piece of leather.
Yeah.
Same thing, we will line the laces.
Really make those stand out.
Yeah. After, of course, we will paint
those laces a different color, slightly giving me
not really different. Yeah, a little bit of different color, but you know, we just paint it in one color and do a light highlight.
Exactly.
No, nothing. We don't have a lot of job with that to do.
Perfect.
So now we can come back with a more higher dilution to blend it.
Really make it blended in there, right? So Lawrence added a little bit more water to that bestial brown, that scorched brown, and just so we can really get a nice blend there.
Yeah, and we don't want it to be too much stronger because we want to conserve the first shadow we have
Absolutely.
to. So now we take a little bit of
scorched brown.
Just a
right there
really line
just
here,
to really
you know.
give it a nice little, to make it look a little 3D there. Give it a little thickness.
You can make a lining with the claw here.
Mm-hmm.
And it is good to use this last color of shadow to do it. And accentuate a little bit more with this really dark brown to line the laces and make them really
separated.
Yeah. Wow. You know, you don't necessarily have to do all the step of lining I do before. I like to do that because I see where I'm going.
Exactly.
But you can do it only with the last one I am making just now.
So now Lauren's going to add a little bit of kind of a purplish blue. And it's a Prince August color.
Yeah. I'm doing carefully with the first coat, of course, and then the effect will be much stronger after.
Great.
We add the second there, and then we begin to see it working. A little bit of blue in your brown will make it really deepest.
Right. Adding a cool color to a warm color sometimes helps to deepen it.
Yeah. We can say that we make our warm leather a little bit colder with that. So at this step, it is the last step of the shadows.
So let's take a look at that from the front. Look at that, beautiful, and just quickly on the side there. Let's get a look at it from the side, and look at that. Wow, Really nice job. So now we're starting with the first highlight, which is going to be a mix of the original base coat and just a little bit of bone ivory.
Yeah. So we are painting this part.
The very bottom, because we want to get that nice transition from dark to light, from the bottom to the top, the top to the bottom. Sorry.
And you know, this part of Mini normally receive
a lot of light.
Yeah, much more in this part, because here you get the
shadow.
The shadow. But we don't try to get to a pure white, for example. Absolutely no, because we are in the
shade.
Yeah.
Like, even though it's receiving a lot of light, it still is still under the shade of the woven itself.
For example, the head receives a lot of light. This part of the Mini don't receive so much light.
Because, and one of the reasons is as well is that you generally want to make the Mini brighter and lighter towards the top where the face is, and not draw so much attention towards the feet and the ankles and the legs.
Yeah, you can make it receiving light, but not so much as the rest of the Mini. Here, an important thing is that we want the shapes of this part
really to stand out.
Yeah.
Right. We really want to heighten that three-dimensional look right there on the edge to really show that actually has some thickness, that leather has some thickness there.
Once again, it's more difficult to
exactly.
the position.
See that? Your stroke is going the wrong way. Again, that's because of the equipment.
And here, because it is attractive for the eye if you put an interesting light here. You see, it's interesting after to come back here with a little more depth.
Absolutely.
Here with this first highlight, you see how it's becoming highlighted.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really standing out there. Wow, look at that.
And it is only the first.
Wow. Okay.
So now we are using a really more highlighted color, just a little bit of the precedent mix,
right,
and much more ivory bone. You can see we got a little bit of brown in it, but this highlight, you will see.
Wow, yeah, it's really showing up.
Is really making the lights. Like you can see, I painted really small areas to make certain areas of the Mini standing out.
Right.
And with the second pass, you really see it.
Yeah,
right,
wow,
right,
look at that. When you did that, it really popped out there. Yeah. And you'll see this effect a lot on a lot of Minis where they have this exact same technique that they're using, where they're highlighting just the edge of a piece of metal or just the edge of a piece of a shield or a knife or something. for sure.
We're done with that. Took a little bit of pure ivory.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Those parts of the mini are so thin that we don't need a big dilution. We're done with that.
And we're done with that. So we've just base coated all three of the claws there at the foot.
Yeah. With a scorched brown.
Exactly, scorched brown. And we're going to go into the first highlight.
Yeah, we can say highlight. We paint the claw the same way we paint the hair. The hair. We are going to shadow to highlight.
Exactly.
So it's not really a highlight what we do. We are applying a color, another brown.
Of color.
The brown we use is bestial brown directly.
That's right.
So now, always the same thing. You can dilute it more or less. It depends the result you want to have.
Exactly. And you'll notice that Laurent is doing the same technique he used before, where he's taking the paint and dragging it up towards the highlights.
Yeah.
He's not leaving too much paint at the bottom where the claw's supposed to be darkest.
Yeah, sure. Because I want to have the deepest shadow
at the bottom and the lightest at the top, exactly.
So here we don't have any problem with the paint job because we just have one area. And you know, the clouds seem normally they are touching the
ground.
Yeah, the ground. So you can do little thing like that because they are in a natural way. They are certainly not totally have a smooth look.
And again.
And again,
nice dilution,
and again,
and
yeah.
Keep going and going because the bestial brown is such a dark color.
Yeah.
Sorry, the scorched brown is such a dark base.
Yeah.
We can have to go again and again with the bestial brown.
Here
you can see even from one claw to the next, the claw right beside it, that even after 6-7 coats,
oh yeah, 6-7,
it's barely noticeable that what we've done.
So now we're okay with the first color, the bestial brown.
So again, we are starting with the next highlight stage with a 50-50 mix of graveyard earth and bestial brown.
Yeah. Always the same thing. I began carefully. Anyway, when the color began to fix, and I'm okay with the result.
Exactly.
I can dilute it a little bit less.
Exactly. And that's important for our viewers to remember. Try to get into the habit of waiting for the layer to dry, blow on it, and then put your next layer. And that's really a really important secret of getting really good blending.
And here you can see I don't want to have a regular effect, so I do little.
Irregular, You want it to look like it's got stripes or striations or different colors in there. It's kind of broken up a bit. Yeah.
Here you can see that the graveyard earth color we added in our bestial brown is really desaturated.
Absolutely.
So it began to achieve a more natural look to the claw. And you can see I am working on a smallest area at each step.
Exactly.
Sometimes I go to the area under just to make my blend.
Blend a little bit better.
Yeah, to have
and do it while it's still wet, so you can really blend it. When it's dry, it's a little bit difficult to.
Yeah. So I think this claw began to look really natural.
Nice. Really natural, exactly. So now we've added just a little bit more graveyard earth to that color.
Yeah.
And yeah, we're just going to go with that.
Then you began to really see this color, you know.
Absolutely, it's really showing through now.
But you see, to have this effect, this result, it takes. I don't have counted them, but we used to.
Yeah, we're probably on past number 20 or 30 there.
Yeah.
Exactly. But when it's such a small area, it's not a big deal. It doesn't take very long. Of course, if you're doing a giant area, this could get a little tedious.
Sure. If you work with the same technique to a big piece of fabric, for example, you will have a perfect blending, but it takes you a lot of time. It's the choice.
Exactly.
And then now we began to add a little bit of bleach bone.
Bleach bone.
Yeah.
Right on.
I show it.
Yeah, that's okay. You don't have to show it.
Okay.
Let me just start recording it.
Then you can see we have something really natural.
Absolutely. Right on the ridge there.
And I like to do those little
Striations.
Yeah.
Those little stripes in the.
because you can see with that these clothes are not really new clothes.
Absolutely.
There we can add a final highlight with pure bleach bone.
Perfect.
And we just put it on the sharpest part of the claw. Then you can come back with a little bit more dilution and make a little wash on this part to blend it a little bit more. Did you see the difference between
Absolutely. Can we get a side
after
view?
and before and
Can we get a side
after?
view of that? Yeah. Can we get a side view of that? Let's take a quick look from the side. Completely more to the side. Yeah, more. Let's get a look at a side view of that, and wow, look at that. You can see from one claw to the other, it makes a big difference. It looks really nice.
So we are doing our first shadow with a mix of graveyard earth and scorched brown.
Perfect. Okay, go ahead.
Now we are beginning our first shadow on the wood.
Okay, and we've already went ahead and base coated the crossbow for you with graveyard earth.
Yeah.
Right, and so this is the first shadow on the crossbow.
So we got one here. Begin with that. We can of course begin with stronger if we want, because this part will be in the shadow. But with that kind of mix, we can see before if the color works together, if we are pretty satisfied with that. If we are not, we can use other. So try to find the places where
the shadows would fall.
Yeah.
Naturally. Exactly.
Surely here.
Absolutely.
Here it is certainly interesting in this part. You can see here, and I can see too, to put a little bit of. But we are going to
just focus on the top.
Yeah,
of the crossbow.
just focus on this part here, because this part will be in the shadow and this part will be in the light. You get always, of course, to make lining between different parts. Here normally it is metal, so we want to
add a little separation.
Yeah,
absolutely. And this is probably one of the first rectangular pieces we worked on. Everything else was very organic. The cloth, very organic. The face, very organic.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
So now we are okay with this part here of the mini. Now we are going to come with our second shadow.
Okay.
So we're adding a little bit more
Scorch brown.
Scorch brown. So you can try. It is a little bit
right at the tip there.
Yeah, you can try to keep the first shadow and just, you see with the point of my,
yeah, absolutely, look at it.
How I tried not to cover the first shadow I have put.
Yeah, it's really coming out nice there.
This part is in total shadow, for example, under this. And don't forget to come back with a little bit of lining and to do this part because it is in the deepest shadow. I will not really achieve it, but just with the position of the crossbow. This part will be in real total shadow. So we are coming back with more darker color after. Here, for example, we do the same here and here, with lining. You can blend it. I come here with something a little bit less diluted to show you. Of course, this part here under will be in shadow, much more important shadow.
because the light is coming from here. If you want something zenithal.
Absolutely.
So where you see it begins to really become the separation between the two. This kind of lining
really helps to separate.
Yeah,
it does a really good job of.
I have put a little bit of Scotch brown. Yeah.
And a little too much there, so we'll just kind of blend that.
We can take another pen, another brush with our paint. Okay, because of the position, it's not really easy to do, but you understood.
You guys will be a lot smoother when you're making these.
You
lines.
understood the
It's
way
very
to do it.
difficult to make straight lines. Absolutely, we understand.
So now we are going to do the same with something more dark. So we are going to put some black cows.
Black, chaos black?
Yeah, chaos black.
Okay.
We are going to put some chaos black
In the mix.
Yeah,
Okay.
in the mix.
Okay.
Okay, you see, I painted there. There is not a problem because we
Yeah, we haven't even worked on that yet.
Yeah.
Exactly.
remember to. A lot of people are just doing the lining there. Finally, I prefer to come with lots of different colors. If one way, even if at least we just see the deepest. Okay, I just do it here to show you. Then we come in all the. I have diluted it a little bit because I'm not totally satisfied about the deepest and the darker of this shadow. So I come with my last mix to cover a little bit and make it a little bit more dark. I began with something like that.
Yeah, so this is Graveyard Earth and Bleached Bone.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Not too diluted. So now we're coming here and here.
With a nice little highlight. Perfect. Look at that. It's already showing up.
You can do more steps if you want between the colors. Here we do a little thing here. And we can do a little thing here. But we come after with okay, you do the same thing here. This part too. You need the highlight here. Here. You see it becomes.
Yeah, absolutely.
We get woods. So now we are going to put a little bit of
Bleached Bone.
pure bleach bone because we don't want here to do too much step.
Okay. Dilute that with a little water there.
A little bit at the beginning. I always I always begin with something diluted, even if I know
Absolutely.
how it works. I prefer to do that, it's more smooth. You're not obliged to do that if you don't care about the fact that it is smooth. For example, if you do something for armies and you got 20 orcs with a crossbow
Exactly.
It will be really long to.
That's really starting to really show up there very well. It's looking really
You
good.
see here the importance of the final highlight. You see that I don't do the same everywhere. Yeah, I probably paint that part, of course, but I just want to show you on this part because it is more simple for me, and the principle is the same. You know, I began here doing one, then I began here doing one other, then I began here, and the color become more stronger. And
as it goes down, right? So you sort of keep, you're not giving an equal highlight right along the whole edge. You're sort of a little bit stronger at the top, and then as it sort of fades out the highlight as it goes down the edge. And that gives a really nice effect because then it's obvious to somebody who's looking at your miniature that you didn't just take one stroke and rub it right down the side of the edge.
So you get here, for me, something really convincing for the wood, and you've seen we did it in 5 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, now we are going to put our first shadows on this part.
And it's a mix of chaos black and base coat, which is German blue.
Yeah.
From Prince August.
We try to keep a little bit more definition, and the part under will be in the shadow too, because we are keeping that for light point.
Exactly.
Doing our lining between the two parts, the wood and the metal. We want to
get that separation and a nice little lining around that.
For that you can dilute a little bit more. It takes a little bit more time. When you're doing what I am doing, if you make something too big around this part, you can come after with your base coat to fix it.
That's something we talked about before. Sometimes having too much paint on the brush, sometimes it might deposit a little too much paint.
Yeah, if we have a lot of paint here on the brush, it will pass. It will be too
big.
Yeah, too big, and you know the paint will be everywhere, and we don't want that. So now I can perfectly paint under, but you have to shadow all this part under.
Now this is a part of the miniature that's at the back of the miniature as well. We were going to mention to you guys before, just because the DV's running a little bit long here, we're going to start speeding things up because just to make the DVD fit into the make sure it fits on 2 DVDs.
Yeah. Here we're done with the shadow.
Exactly. And again, this is a part of the miniature that's at the back. It's not the center of attention, so you can spend a little bit less time perfecting these smaller parts.
You can spend a lot of time if you want to, but here it's not the purpose. We are coming back with our base coat, you know,
to really smooth that out.
Yeah, to smooth that a little bit. Just right here.
Yeah, absolutely. Got like a nice dilute application of our on our base coat to really smooth those edges back out.
Here the position is not the better for me, but you see what I try to do.
Absolutely.
To make this part blended, to blend the shadows and the base coat here and here,
Absolutely.
to make it look more natural.
Absolutely.
Same thing with that part, and you push your pigment to this part, which will be the highlighted part.
Absolutely. So we're going to start here with the first highlight application with about a 50-50 mix of our base coat and skull white, very dilute.
We are not looking here for perfect blending, we are looking for the metal effect.
Exactly.
We can show on this part too.
Exactly, and because it is metal, notice some metal is very smooth, some metal is very blotchy. It really depends on the effect that you're going after. And again, just because we have all this equipment in our way, it's a little hard for us to make it smooth, but you guys will be able to get a much smoother result. But at least you're learning the technique here. That's the important thing. And slowly by slowly you can see, very, very lightly you can begin to see that it's starting to pop a little bit more. And doing round objects, Laurent, is a very tough thing to do, isn't it? A lot of people struggle with trying to make things very smooth, especially when it comes to doing circular objects,
Yeah.
like shoulders on Space Marines, and
It is one of the most difficult things.
Exactly.
I think.
Absolutely.
But after that, you know, a technique very used when you finish to put your highlights like emblem. You can see that it is a spot of brightest color. After that, you can come with a lot of washes to make the perfect blending on those areas.
Exactly. This is the type of area where a lot of dilution and a lot of patience will probably give you the absolutely smoothest result. But again, the technique is the same. The time that you put into it obviously is a lot different.
As you can see, we began to have a light point here.
Absolutely. It's really starting to show up there. And you can always do other things as well. I've seen other people do with metals, put green and reds or blues into the shadows to give a really rusty look.
Yeah.
But that's something that we're going to be covering a lot more in our advanced tutorials. How to do rust and verdigris and grime and dents and blood and all kinds of other stuff. But you get a very good idea of how to do that effect here.
It's finished for me.
So we're using pure skull white here.
Yeah.
Just to make a little tip.
That is what we call.
Really get the glint.
That's what we call a light point on specific areas.
Absolutely.
The interest you have had is to make them really in the same way on each part, so that you get A total effect.
In photography, we call that specular reflection.
Yeah.
It's reflecting the light source, and usually the light source is the sun, and the sun in the sky is a very, very small little point, which is why we make a little point light, because it comes up looking like a little point.
Be careful here. I have a little bit too diluted, so I am scary about not making it where I want to make it. Yeah.
There we go. Perfect. Perfect.
So now we are going to begin the shadow of this part.
And we accidentally kind of dinged it with a little bit of black.
Yeah, but
as you can see,
not
but
really.
Don't worry, it's not a big deal. Our
No.
shadows will cover over that. It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
So yeah, so we're applying a first shadow coat of Codex Gray and Chaos Black.
Yeah.
Nice and dilute.
Yeah, because I always began with diluted, a nice diluted paint. I prefer.
Absolutely.
Remember the blade? It's almost the same thing. Yeah.
Exactly, because it's such pretty much a straight surface.
Yeah.
Slightly curves, but it's not the same kind of painting as the crossbow's circular metal part there. That spherical kind of coloring. This is just mostly straight. As you can see, the brush strokes are just going straight up and down. And Lauren's using the same technique again, putting on a little bit of paint, blowing on it, putting on a little bit of paint, blowing on it. Very simple to do. This is actually one of the simpler parts of the Mini, kind of like a claw. You know, very small area, one movement.
Yeah, and you can see that the color
is absolutely it's already starting to sort of come through. And you can see that part where we made the mistake is already starting to disappear.
Yeah. And we will come back with more stronger shadow here.
Absolutely.
You can see there we have a separation. We will come after with our base coat diluted to blend that. We have shown that a lot of time. You know that now.
Absolutely. You're not learning anything new here. I'm just getting familiar. Sometimes just repeating things and seeing them over and over again really gets it into your head.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes when you see something once, it just doesn't stick. But you see it a couple times with different colors, you begin to realize there's not really a whole lot of secret or mystery to this whole process.
Of course, as here for with the position, I just do this thing, but you have to do it here.
Of course.
You have to shadow this part because it is under. You have to shadow here, and another little thing you have to do, but we come after, but I can show you now. You know, the lining, we have talked a lot about that.
Yeah,
Here we will line all
absolutely.
that.
Absolutely. And again, because this DVD is running really long, we're gonna start speeding things up here.
Yeah, we can.
But you'll get the basic idea. We won't leave you guys high and dry.
Of course, you try not to cover all the first job you've done. You began a little bit after. You know, I began here, my second highlight, my second shadow, and try to keep this part with the first.
Exactly. Selective transparency shading.
Yeah.
There's a lot of fancy terms for all these kind of painting techniques that you'll find, but there's no real, you know, fanciness behind any of these words. They just sound fancy, so to speak.
Something really interesting you can do after that is to use washes to make it perfectly smoother, or to give some color more.
Absolutely.
You know, we will show after how to paint the little bomb here.
Yeah, that'll be done really nicely.
And I began with the same colors exactly, and then after that I come with only blue washes, and you will see what it will do.
Absolutely. And again, this is one of those areas where it's a very simple movement, just up and down, very easy to do, and you can pretty much spend a lot of time blending it. You can actually make it very, very, very smooth because it's so simple at this point to make it smooth. So why not take the extra effort in areas like this when you have a very simple movement to keep going and going and going and make it really nice and smooth.
Yeah. Now I have added a little bit more black. Absolutely. Because we want to accelerate a little bit. And then I began here.
Absolutely. And you can see that it's really starting to come out. You can see that there's a lot brighter at the top of that bear trap and a lot darker towards where it meets the crossbow.
Yeah, and we don't have do any highlight for the moment, you know.
Absolutely.
So imagine with the highlight. So now we are going to begin to highlight this bear trap with school white into our base coat. I repeat, it was Codex Gray.
Codex Gray, perfect. Yeah. And you can see already, some of our viewers, it's very easy to see that, look at how nice everything looks once it's all painted together, you know? I know sometimes when we were starting out the crossbow, I was a little scared as to, you know, it's not looking as good as I wanted it to look, but I guess sometimes, you know, you really have to paint everything around the part to really have something show up, because now that the bear trap's painted, that crossbow is looking really, really nice against it.
Sure. So now we are doing the same thing, but not in the same direction, because we want the light to become higher.
Exactly. And the same technique you were using before, where you're taking your paint and pushing it to where you want it deposited.
Yeah. Where we want that the pigment...
That's where we end the stroke.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And you see in 4 or 3 pass.
Yeah, look at that. It's already starting to pop up there.
Then you can try to do something smoother with those parts. We have done a little bit of lining, of black lining between all the teeth to make them stand out.
Exactly.
Then here we can do a lot of interesting things. You know, there is this part is unpainting, just a little bit of highlighted here, lining here, but you have to.
Yeah, exactly.
Just with that, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Bam. And you can do that on your own, and you can see, just like we did the other bolt on the crossbow.
You can.
All those little parts will really help this little piece of equipment really shine.
I began with a first strong highlight to make it faster, but you can begin with something more near our base coat and blend it.
Absolutely.
Here, I want to show you something. Tell me if I am not out of frame.
No, go ahead.
Okay, in this position, it is really interesting.
To do right at the edge, just like exactly.
The edge, always the edge, take more light.
Just like kind of like we did on the leather buckler on the ankle when we did the top part there.
Of course, you have to do the same thing here, but. Like I said, it is not totally finished here, so the effect is not so much strong than you can see here.
Exactly.
You have to highlight this part because it's receiving a lot of light.
Exactly.
The part here you got to.
And I think at this point our viewers are finally beginning to understand, especially those who are new to painting, is that these techniques we're just really using the same technique again and again and again. You know?
Yeah.
The same for the sword, same for the leather, same for the crossbow and the metal. It really is just a matter of choosing the right colors.
Sure. And now you see.
Absolutely.
We will go to finally pure white, just on this area. You can do something better in this area. I began with a strong highlight, but you can make this part more blending because you can see a little bit that you get the transition.
Absolutely.
If you want something really for showcase, really perfect, you smooth this part.
Absolutely.
If you don't want, it's not really something really important.
Absolutely.
You get the effect.
Let's take some pure white there.
Yeah.
Just a very little bit.
I always broke a little bit my white with another color.
Absolutely. And Lauren likes to dilute a little bit because he doesn't like to make mistakes. And keeping a nice dilution, even though you know you're only applying it to a certain part, helps you from making a mistake. Especially when your paintbrush accidentally hits another part of the miniature.
Oh yeah.
That's a good reason to keep things dilute, because I seem to do that a lot. I always end up hitting part of the miniature that I spent a lot of time on, and if you got a lot of paint on it, it's but if it's nice and dilute anyways, you save yourself a lot of grief.
You get an interesting final highlight.
Absolutely, and look at how beautiful, let's just hold that frame for a second. Look at how well everything's starting to work together. The crossbow with the bear trap, with the metal part of the crossbow, it's really starting to come together. Really beautiful job, Lauren.
So for the first shadow I do the same mix. Little bit of chaos black into my Codex Gray.
Perfect.
Same thing, good dilution to be sure. So now we are going to paint this little bomb the same way we have painted. The position is not really good. The same way we have painted the bear trap. But here, the aim we had is to inverse the things. We are going to shadow from there to there.
Mm-hmm.
Make, of course, a little lining here. And then we are going to highlight there from there, because after we are coming with blue washes and try to give this little thing the look as it was a little bit transparent.
Absolutely.
Not like glass, but something like a magical bomb, you know.
Absolutely.
With some special stuff in it.
Okay, great. So let's go ahead and do that.
So same technique. Carefully with diluted paint. I'm trying to blend it very well. Don't forget to do your lining.
Absolutely.
You can do it after with a stronger color, but I like to have just this line. And normally this part I can see here, but normally this part is to try to do something really smooth here if you want to achieve this sort of effect, because
it's very important.
Yeah, with the washes after, all will be really blended with the washes, but the best you do before, the best you have after.
Absolutely.
So nothing new here. You see that it became more and more shadowed. Of course, in a natural position, you will work easily. In just one pass, you can do whole.
Absolutely.
Like that, but
again, you guys will be able to achieve a much smoother result, but it's the technique that's important. Okay, so Lord just went ahead and finished the shadowing on his own. The reason we did that is because he made about 200 or 300 strokes there to get a really smooth blend. So again, like we said before, especially on circular objects, taking the patience and the time to to go over and over and over and over again, it is going to yield the best result. So
yeah, not only in the same direction to avoid
the paint strokes. Yeah. We don't want to see any of the brush strokes. So he did that about 200 times. Exactly the same technique we just showed you, but
exactly
a couple hundred times. Great. So this is the first highlight pass on the little bomb there. And we're using the exact same colors as we used in the bear trap for now. Again, Codex gray base coat, and then a little bit of chaos black for the shadow in there, and then adding a little bit of skull white for the first highlight pass. But we're going to end up with a very different result, as you're going to see when we start adding more colors in there. But again, that's another technique. You know, you can always start with the same colors and end up getting something completely different.
Oh yeah, because we are going to do a lot of washes after that.
Absolutely. And again, this is going to require the same kind of patience as with the shadows. Very smooth blending, very dilute painting, slowly going over that, slowly waiting for a result to sort of appear before our eyes.
And you can see just with those...
Just with a few even, it's starting to really get a nice...
And we try to concentrate, you know, the highlighted part just here. And we finally finish with white here.
Absolutely.
To have this transparency effect.
Absolutely. Again, same technique, pulling the paint to where you want it to be deposited.
Yeah.
We don't want to move the brush stroke in the wrong direction. We don't want it to be deposited right in the deep shadows, because we're trying to keep those shadows. So you notice that his brush stroke is starting near the transition and ending up right at the highlight point.
You can see that I'm doing that.
And then stopping, and then coming back into that direction again.
That.
Exactly.
And that.
Exactly. And that's the way you really have to paint.
The pigments are concentrating.
Right there.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And this little spherical object, this little bomb, is a really good thing for you guys to learn, because basically muscles are made up of circles. So you guys are going to get a really good idea of how to paint some of those miniatures, like the barbarians that have really bulging muscles.
Yeah.
Where the modeling is really exaggerated. On this mini, the modeling is very beautifully, and the muscles are not very exaggerated. Just like, as you can see, remember on the leg, the modeling wasn't very exaggerated. It was almost didn't. Remember, we had to paint in our own muscles there.
Yeah.
So on some models, the muscles are just extremely exaggerated, especially on the Games Workshop models.
Yeah.
Extremely huge muscles. So this is a really good chance for you guys to learn how to do spherical surfaces.
I have added a little bit more skull white in my precedent mix.
Exactly. And actually, I just want to mention now, even for those people who are interested in doing skin tones, barbarians and stuff like that, we're going to have an advanced tutorial coming out soon as well, discussing many of specifically focusing on skin tone, using only skin tone colors to achieve just the most beautiful skin tones you can get. Because I don't know about you, but blue is not really a natural skin tone.
No, sure.
Exactly.
It isn't.
Unless you're passed away, but we won't go there. Wow, that's really looking something great. Just look at that. Beautiful, beautiful.
Nothing complicated here. Same thing we do with the bear trap. Just choosing and well selecting the
colors.
The colors and where you want your paint to be.
Exactly.
We want the reflection here.
Absolutely. And you can already see just from the constant application of that white highlight, we're already starting to get a different effect in the bear trap, because the bear trap was more you didn't go as intense with the highlights, but here we are, because we're really trying to show off an effect here. We're going to be showing off a sort of a semi-transparent glass effect on that little bomb.
Yeah.
And so we finished the first highlight pass, and again, Lauren just took it off to the side and just finished on his own there.
Now we are what we are doing now is totally another thing. We are going to do a lot of washes.
Exactly, because we want to add a sort of a color to the whole bomb there without actually ruining any of the highlighting and shading that we did. And you'll see when we're finished what kind of result we get.
Oh yeah,
obviously.
we are working here with a really
dilute hot
yeah.
turquoise.
Yeah.
That's a Games Workshop hot turquoise, very dilute. And now you notice that Lauren's going everywhere, covering the whole bottle there.
Except for the moment, just a little bit of the white part, because I want to keep
the color away from there.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Perhaps after when I finish, I put a little bit of blue on this white part, but for the moment I try not to touch it so many times. I touch all the rest of the bomb.
Absolutely.
You can see it is really progressive. You become a little bit of blue,
yeah,
but it is really hard to see for the moment.
Absolutely.
But the final effect I want for that part is something
very colorful and very nice. Yeah.
And really shiny. You know, if I do so much passing with my brush, finally it will have a little bit of shiny. We will come after with a gloss varnish for achieving this effect.
Absolutely.
Here the color began to be a little bit more present.
And again, Lauren is blowing on
the
miniature.
This is my way to do it. You know what? You can do that with ink too. If you put blue ink, you get something
very similar.
Yeah. Certainly not so well blended.
I think the reason a lot of people don't use inks is because there's really not a lot of selection of inks out there as opposed to paints.
Oh, and it is too because it is too much shiny.
Yeah, exactly. Ink tends to have a very shiny look after it dries.
Yeah.
And it's a little unrealistic in the shadows because in the shadows things don't shine. So
and
people tend to stay away from inks.
And ink have ink is going in the deepest part of the mini. Yeah. And staying at this part. And when it dries after, it is doing the not really good looking areas you can see on some minis.
I've never ever liked the look of ink. I've seen people that have worked even very well with ink, but I find it too shiny in the shadows.
Yeah.
And if you don't really know what you're doing with it, you get really, because it pools so much. It pools so much more than paint does.
Yeah. For some kind of thing, it is interesting. For blood, for example. A lot of people use ink for achieving the effect, the little shiny effect.
Exactly, because that's the effect you're after. You want a little bit of shininess. You want that kind of strange drying that it does, because it dries a little funny, and ink dries really well for blood. But that's about the limit of using ink. Anyway,
a lot of people achieve a really good effect with ink. I don't like to work with inks, but I don't say that it is a bad way to paint.
Absolutely.
But personally, it is not mine. But I know people who are doing really interesting things with ink.
Okay, and so there we go. We got the final highlight on the bomb. You can see, wow, it looks really good considering that we based the entire thing in gray and white, and look at that beautiful effect. And now we're just going to add some varnish to it to give it a really nice glossy effect. So here's the final result with just a little bit of varnish, about 4 parts water and 1 part varnish, and just about 3-4 coats of varnish right on top of the whole bomb will give it a really nice glossy look. Great.